What an introduction. I love that video. We spent a lot of time on it, and it really, hopefully, captures a lot of the emotion we hope you all leave with. So welcome to ControlsCon. We are thrilled you are here. Thank you so much for attending and spending your time with us over the next couple of days. We hope that this will be the most informational, some of the most powerful information, and some of the most, I'll say some of the most cutting edge times of our industry are here today. And we're seeing it, and we're hopefully going to give you all a little glimpse of what we're seeing and show you guys how great the products we've been working you with is. They continue to help us in many new ways, and it's just a really exciting time. We've been working super hard on ControlsCon. I think we started about a year ago, and this is the culmination of a whole team's effort, and we're super excited. So let's get started. We're already late into our 23 minutes late, to be exact. So I'm going to get started. I'm Scott Cochran, CEO, President of Cochran Supply. Cochran Supply, we've turned into what we like to think of as a technology company. Over the last 15, 20 years, we have merged IT excellence with BAS, electrical mechanical engineering, lighting, security, and we believe now that we're in a great position to help this new technology get into the market. At Cochran Supply, our #1 focus is to enable you folks to be able to use new technology and help you all be successful with that technology. And at the end of the day, we want to help the whole industry grow, right? We want to move away from the thought that we compete with each other and understand that we're competing with the whole world that's trying to bring tech into what we do. And so with that, there's these technologies that we're playing with today. And a lot of you know me very well, and I wanted to go into like some super tech stuff. But really, I want to draw your attention to what today I believe are the most disruptive technologies that we have at our hand, within our grasp, and talk a little bit about how they're being utilized. So one of the major developments that I hope you all understand and we're all seeing is we are moving into an IP-centric industry. Prior to, or in earlier years, most of the wire communication networks we would run would be like 485, or would be like a 2-wire twisted pair. But what's happening is most of the devices that we're able to sell you now for applications have IP built into them. Internet Protocol, Ethernet. And the reason why is because those products can do a lot more than the old serial devices could. And as we move to this IP, Internet of Things architecture, where more and more devices are IT, we as an industry have to change how we install projects. And with that, we have developed a new methodology that we're constantly trying to educate folks on, which is this operational technology network. What is an OT network? An OT network is simply an IT network that stood up for the services that help manage a building. So, in other words, OT networks are built for comfort, safety, and security. IT networks are built to run business systems, manage data, store information, and things like that. And because these technologies are so different, and because the needs of the systems are so different, we as an industry have to start actually running our own IP networks in buildings, standing up networks with servers around IT infrastructures, and then protecting them from the IT infrastructures that are going to touch them. Now, when we got IP originally, we just ran into the owners and we started saying, hey, we can use your network to move the data. Well, originally it made a lot of sense. It was economical and things like that. But what we've come to learn is there's a huge expense in working with an owner to get OT-type devices to work on their networks properly. There's also many vulnerabilities that we bring to comfort, safety, and security as we expose these networks to other networks in the internet. And with that, we, Cochrane Supply, have spent the last 2 years studying OT network design. And we now believe that we have a design, or the beginning of a design, for OT networks that is reliable, that is secure, and that is something that all of the companies in this room can stand up and manage themselves. My team, Mike Mitchell and guys, they have, tomorrow morning we're going to do our tech session, and in that, Mike and team have prepared the integration lifecycle, and Mike's actually going to go through with all of you, or with those who are in that session. He's going to show you guys how we're currently putting networks together, and he's going to show you some of the risks, some of the do's, some of the don'ts, and get into a lot of detail. We have, the group that we've been studying is the ICS CERT, which is the Industrial Cybersecurity Division of the Homeland Security for the United States government. And they have written guidelines for cybersecurity for things like power plants and large industrial facilities. We've been studying that and some of the remediation of some of the attacks that have happened. And what we believe is, in our industry, we are coming up with an OT network design that is both as secure as we can make it for the money that they'll give us in the budget, right? Because we all know no one's ready to just kick a bunch of money over so we can put in IP networks. So we have to be reasonable, but even though we don't get the right budget, guess what? We're still all liable for that OT network and how it works, okay? So we have to be smart and start to think about this network design, make sure that we're protecting ourselves, make sure we have the right bandwidth, and then of course make sure our applications are going to be able to work regardless of that IT infrastructure around it. And you're going to see more and more talks about OT technology. A lot of you know in Cochrane Supply, we have a gentleman named Greg Fitzpatrick. He works with consulting engineers, and he spends most of his time helping them lay out OT networks now. And we're seeing more and more engineers asking to have flat IP architectures for their projects. So it's an exciting time for this, and like I said, I believe the whole BAS industry is going to shift quickly. People whom I work with that come from like the telephone industry and others, as they tell me, like the telephone industry, when they were still running RJ11 and everything, it was like they came out with these IP phones and everybody was kind of like, oh, those are cool, maybe they'll use them. And by the third year, it was the market dominance, right? So I think we're going to see something similar with these HVAC in terms of IP controllers and their pervasiveness in the market. And as they do, this OT network becomes a very important part of your system that you're installing, supporting, maintaining. Okay. This next topic is one that's near and dear to many people's hearts. But to my marketing manager, she said, this is so boring, Scott. You can't talk about this. But I said, but it's so important, Christina. You don't understand. So as we have started to connect all these buildings together, as we've connected all these systems on networks, and what's happened is we're starting to share our data with other software, with other systems, with ERPs, with apps, with data lakes, with all these things. And the first thing they do when they see our data is, from that perspective, is they gag. You got the same data value in your database like 800,000 times. How are we going to parse through that and make any sense of that, okay? So we as an industry, again, especially with tools like Niagara, we have new tools that allow us to carry a thing called metadata, okay? Metadata would be data associated with other data. So for instance, if you have a temperature point in this room, it's still a temperature, but it's also in the soundboard, stage left. It's a part of a mechanical system. It's got a whole bunch of data associated with that one temperature that allows a database to figure out where that temperature is, what it's for, why it's being used. Within Niagara, when they came out with Niagara 4, they embedded a bunch of tools in there that allow us to manage and create much more usable data structures for our systems. Many of you have spent a ton of time creating data standards that help you maintain that data integrity of your systems and give you the openness to use multiple software platforms to use that same data. This is becoming more and more important. Now, a couple of years ago, we co-developed the Niagara Advanced Training. that was geared towards helping all of you understand those feature sets that help you manage that data better. And with that training, we've had quite a few customers who have adopted that training. And believe it or not, and this is the thing my number one point to you about data from a contracting perspective is those who use like tagging, hierarchy, role service, use those features in Niagara and put all that extra effort into putting all that data into it, their jobs are done quicker than those who don't. So the reality is, while you think it's a bigger scope of work to tag all your points, to set up a role service, to, all that other stuff, if you use these services properly, you set them up, your jobs are going to go faster. You're going to program them quicker, and when you need to make modifications, changes, updates, additions, it's going to go 1,000 times smoother. All of you should be considering what the data looks like that you're leaving behind. Think of it as your artist's signature of your job going forward, okay? It's no longer just about the graphics, okay? The data architecture that you leave behind it really talks to the quality of the product that you're leaving, okay? And we're seeing more and more end users choose contractors whom respect that data integrity and make sure that the owner's needs are met with it. Those are the ones that are being chosen to do repetitive jobs for large end users. And we're seeing more and more of those trying to get that data integrity together. So we are the data plumbers of the future. It's really exciting, right? As the mechanical people. We are the plumbers. We're going to continue to be the plumbers, but now we're going to do it with data. Data that supports mechanical, electrical, safety, security systems, right? All right. So that was not as boring as you thought, right, Christina? So, anyways, all right. So this one's the exciting one. So now that we have a network to support all of our integrations, now that we have a data design so we can use the data effectively, now we get to participate in this new world called Internet of Things. And Internet of Things is a broad topic, and I don't want to try and define it, except in buildings, because that's the world that I feel like we live in. So when I look at Internet for Buildings, I feel like and you're looking, what does Internet for Buildings look like? In terms of the architecture, I believe there are 3 key components. The first component in the lower right-hand corner is something that we've already been doing for years, which is creating autonomous digital control of safety, security, and comfort in buildings. So we already put computers in, and we can automate what temperature, what light level, whatever the needs are, we can automate that now. We can put it on a schedule, we can do all sorts of neat things. And with proper networks and proper data architectures, we can share that data with other systems now. Well, something happened a couple years ago was these digitized systems that we were putting in, we got to connect them to the internet, which is the second piece of IoT. Anybody who says, I want an IoT solution that's 100% on-prem, please remind them that the first word in IoT is internet. So if you want to be on-prem, you can't connect to the internet. So anyways, IoT means it's connected to the internet, okay? And in that internet connection, it created a new way of servicing these systems. And part of that became something that we call the occupant experience. And so the third piece of this is that, which is the occupant experience. And this is the brand new piece over here that we're just now starting to add to how we control the building. Because for the first time, in a couple of different ways, we can garnish from the occupants who they are, where they are, what they're doing within a building. And with that new information, we can start to have the building react according to the way people are operating within it. And as we start to perform these new capabilities, we are no longer just affecting energy management, okay? Like the whole BAS industry, every payback I've heard about is on energy. We'll pay it back in 3 years, 2 years. It's all about energy. What if instead of focusing on energy, we were focusing on, we're going to make that department 50% more efficient, right? I know other speakers are going to speak to some of those values, the 330, 300, but we look at new ways of creating return on investment for the systems we're doing. And one way is by creating a much better business for people to operate in by using the new technology at hand. Within this triangle, I believe there are going to be whole industries that sprout up. For example, the connection between the digital control system and the internet. I can't count how many vendors are knocking on our door right now trying to sell us that connection, right? Because that's an industry in its own. There are VPNs, there are firewalls, there's all sorts of products there. We are working with some very large web service type organizations that are looking at creating data lakes specifically for our industry that can just collect huge amounts of data and backstore it for you. And we're talking major names in data storage are now going to be writing drivers into BAS systems to do that for us. It's going to be a huge part of our industry is the data management that now we're going to be able to take advantage of. It'll be an entire industry. And if you look at the relationship between the building applications and the building occupants, there we're going to start to see a new world where the occupant can start to gauge the building not just based on the basic services it's supposed to offer, but now we can start to actually add that cool factor to the buildings. We're going to demo some technology today to kind of show you where this is going. But the next generation of people that work in buildings, they're not going to want to walk up to a sensor and change a set point. They're not going to want to swipe a card, okay? They're going to have different expectations for that building. And we as an industry have to evolve to meet those expectations. And with that, in that last piece, in the who, what, where, we're bringing new technology in for you guys to start looking at as a way to garnish this information about the occupants, right? At the end of the day, it's all about trying to figure out that who, what, where about the occupants, using that information to make the building run better. Well, when we try to figure out that who, what, where, there's a couple of different ways we're seeing it being done today. So I'm going to show you guys two examples of this, a couple of different products that we're playing with right now to give you an example of it. So for the first demonstration, I'd like to invite up Albert Cruz. He's with the Honeywell Connected Buildings, and he's going to talk a little bit about the Vector app. Okay. All right, gotcha.
Cool.
Thanks, Scott. Hello, everyone. Again, as Scott mentioned, my name is Albert Cruz. I'm Global Software Product Leader for Honeywell Connected Enterprises. And just a little bit of backdrop around Honeywell Connected Enterprises. Back in October, we took the next shift in our evolution towards our software industrial journey. So we moved about 4,000 people into a new organization called Honeywell Connected Enterprise, where we focus only on the problems around building software systems in 4 domains. One, buildings, plant, aero, and worker. And so I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we've been building within connected buildings that are going to drive this enhanced occupant experience. So as Scott mentioned, the value is shifting from energy to space and people, right? And this is the undisputed interface for how we can take advantage of connecting people to the building. So from that perspective, about a year and a half ago, we launched the Vector Occupant App platform. And this platform allows us to really drive that $300 per square foot per year that's spent on an individual in order to increase productivity and also to enhance revenue and drive the customer experience. So I'm going to show you, when we started off on this journey, we also wanted to make it self-serviceable. So you'll see, sorry. So we'll move to the next part. It didn't show. Okay, sorry.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
All right, so we're going to start this over, but I'm going to be closer. It's a network issue. So make sure that in that second item that Scott talked about, you got to have great connectivity. So as you can see in this basically self-guided tour, it shows you all the capabilities at a glance and what you can do with this new platform. Everything from access control to wayfinding through the building and also booking conference rooms. And if you think about each of those use cases and more, it's really, just think about your experience of navigating through space or finding people. It's really hard to connect in office complexes, especially those that are becoming more open. You don't have assigned seating, you have hot desking. And so what better way to locate someone using indoor positioning where they share their location and you can connect and you can dynamically then book space to collaborate. So this is about really removing points of friction that occur when you go into a workplace to do whatever you do on a daily basis. Now, we leverage all types of sensor technologies. This sensor in my hand is an iBeacon sensor. You can get it on Amazon.com, $5 a sensor, $1 a sensor. Uses Bluetooth technology, and really it is plug and play. You'll see that I'm going to turn this sensor on. You can't see the fact that now it's on. But once I turned it on, it automatically connected to my app, and it knows who I am, and it knows where I am. So let me just walk you through a few of those things you saw simulated. So imagine, we talk about comfort in buildings. Now imagine getting true comfort from occupants, where occupants can really crowdsource what's going on in a particular space. And because you have location, you know where they are. They don't have to tell you where they are. They can just tell you that, hey, it's warm or it's cold. That request goes to a facility manager. Facility manager gets these crowdsourced requests. We run analytics behind it and let them know where we might need to adjust set points throughout the building, whether it's in conference rooms, open spaces, et cetera. Next, I'll show you that you can also rate a space. So again, we're in this world where people like to give voice to rate whatever. How was your experience when you purchased this product, or how was your experience when you went to this conference? I'm sure you'll be able to rate control cons here in the next day. You can rate your space, and when you go to rate space, you actually can choose, however many stars you think is relevant for that event, for that meeting, for that where you're at. We've already pre-populated different responses. You can also customize the responses as well. So it gives you really an effortless, again, think about removing points of friction. Gives you an effortless way to get this done. So like here, I'll say there's no chair, no light, and bad projector. And I can send that request quite easily, quickly, or that feedback. And then again, that's engagement. It's driving engagement, trying to make the spaces a lot better for the occupants that are in them. So let's look quickly at wayfinding. Because I have positioning, I can actually go into a building. I'm going to just look at a conference room, something we all normally use. See how quickly the platform actually determined where I was contextually in the building, on what floor. I can select the conference room. I can choose to navigate to that room. And it'll quickly give me indoor navigation. So think Google Maps, Apple Maps in a building. The other thing we've done is we've actually extended that so you can actually go indoor, outdoor to indoor positioning. And that's really something that the industry is looking for, because if you think about campuses, so within a building, that's great, but think about a multi-campus location where you really need to get to a meeting that's across campus. This will effortlessly get you in and out and to those other locations. One more thing I want to demo here, two more things. One is book a room. So think about that use case. We've been booking rooms forever, but you got to pull out your laptop, you got to open up the calendar, you got to launch an invite, you got to look at the rooms that are available, you got to secure that room, and then you have to forward that invite to someone else. What about just walking around through space? Because again, we have indoor positioning. These are lick and stick sensors that can go anywhere, that are very cheap, and so they can be ubiquitous overnight. And you just want to book a room, or book a space. The cool thing is that the first thing we did was integrate with Office 365, which everybody has, as a cloud-to-cloud integration. And it automatically knows the rooms, the facility, resources that are available. And so all you have to do is just say, okay, I need a digital board, I need a projector, I need a boardroom, and let's search and see what resources are available. It's getting your location. Once it has that, you can see what resources are available. You take that conference room and you book it. And that is simply, like, it took me less than a minute to do that, which would probably take you about 10 to 15 minutes on your laptop. So these are easy to understand and use and self-guided capabilities that we just continue to enhance on the platform. Last but not least, digital bulletin boards. This is just a simple portal-to-portal integration in the same platform that you can connect to what's happening. So you think about where we are today. We're in ControlCon. So this is a direct integration into what's happening here. And just like that, literally it takes you minutes to actually do this, the portal-to-portal integration. You can actually have, again, at the palm of your hands, awareness on what's going on, whether it's here, where you're at a conference, whether there are workshops happening in your facility, whether there's training going on, whether there are different events, what's the menu at the cafeteria, et cetera. So with that, this platform is scalable. We're able to roll out new features in a matter of weeks and deploy those, and those can be consumed by anyone. So the next stage of this evolution is opening this platform to third parties, which is why we're partnering with Scott and team and others, so that we can deploy this in a more rapid fashion. We've got about 50,000 users on this today across several different countries, and hope that that was very helpful for you today. Thank you.
Albert, thank you. That was awesome. So that app obviously brings a different level of experience to the occupants of the building. Of course, in this case, you got to carry a phone around, right? But my kids, they're so techie, they don't even want to carry a phone around, right? They don't even want to have an app. So what's next? How do we get the information about who, what, where without a device in our hand, right? And for that, I want to show you another sample of this type of technology in a different way. And with that, I want to introduce Isaiah Blackburn with Machine Halo.
What you just saw there, and you can hear, and we'll show you the demonstration in a little bit, was as I was walking toward the access control device, in this case it's a tablet, it automatically recognized me as I was walking towards the camera. But before we get into the demonstration, I want to give you a little bit of background behind Machine Halo and who I am. Once again, I'm Isaiah Blackburn, CEO of Machine Halo. And where Machine Halo started, I worked for Cisco Systems for a little over 15 years. First half of my career spent on mobile networks. Second half was on Internet of Things and smart cities. But it was through the work of building smart cities from the ground up, from a clean sheet of paper, that I realized that there was a technology and a sensor that was more valuable than anything else out there, and that was the camera. But the problem at the time is that there was no platform, there wasn't a solution that made it easy to deploy different types of applications leveraging a camera. There was smart parking cameras. Well, guess what? Those cameras couldn't be used for safety and security. They couldn't be used for smart transportation, whether it's vehicles or trains. It was a completely different system. So Machine Halo built a framework and a platform to enable not only smart cities, but smart buildings deploy a single technology, a single framework. You could think of it with this audience similar to Niagara. But a single framework that allows you to deploy a portfolio of vision applications, vision AI applications, regardless of whether you're using that vision application as a sensor for access control, which we're going to show here, for asset tracking, whether it's on a construction site or priority assets within an enterprise organization, or traditional safety and security. Now, Machine Halo, as it relates to building automation, we are partners with Tritium, and we are bringing smart cameras and artificial intelligence to Niagara. And to give you a little bit of background behind artificial intelligence, when I highlighted we're turning the camera into a sensor, we are leveraging artificial intelligence to do that. And it's not the video itself that's important, it's the information hidden within the video that's important. And we leverage artificial intelligence to extract that important information. What's important information? As I walk up to this access control tablet, it's my identity. It's my face for my identity. If it's for smart transportation, it's vehicles, or smart parking, it's counting the vehicles. You don't care about the rest of the video. You just want it to be used as a sensor. You just want that video. Think of access control, we're no different than scanning the badges. So it's a traditional sensor. So that kind of gives you a background of how we leverage AI, and we're leveraging it as a sensor. And when we deploy hardware, whether it's cameras like for access control or tablets, we are analyzing the video on the device, and we're not sending the entire video back to the cloud to analyze, because we all know that's not only heavy on your network as far as additional hardware that's required, but it's a high cost to backhaul it. And this is coming from my Cisco days. So what we're going to show here is an access control solution. And where we see this solution is viable, and the customers we're currently engaged in either have a high millennial employee base that they don't want to be using badges to scan. They want instant authentication and access. Or two, they have open campuses where there's a lot of threats of individuals that could walk on the campus. They want early notification that those threats and individuals that may be there. So the architectures that we're deploying for access control, imagine this tablet being at the door, at all doors within the building, and then we would have higher powered cameras in open areas or on open hallways or on outdoors in the campuses, and they all seamlessly work together. So to give you the demonstration, Scott, be my guinea pig. Hopefully when it recognizes him, we don't have Detroit SWAT here within 5 minutes, but. So what you're seeing up here did one of two things. It automatically recognized him, and the green light went off. It showed his name, but now he's still in front of the camera, and it's not repeating himself. So what we have, of course, is a timer. So what you don't want is the door to continuously open. And so I think the timer's set to about a minute. And we'll give another example, Monica. And what's interesting is, you know, depending on the individual, you notice how fast you could walk normal. So we know Monica, she had to get a little bit closer, but still accurately identified. And Albert? What you're noticing with Albert, it's still trying to recognize his face, but he doesn't get authenticated.
Sorry, Albert.
Yep. Sorry, you had to be the guinea pig. But so if you look at the long-term value of the solution, it's once you deploy Machine Halo and Vision applications for access control, it's the value of the data that could be used for existing Niagara deployments, especially HVAC, that are already deployed. And as soon as you start correlating that data and the different, not only applications, but automated policies that you could create due to the value of this data, really drives building automation in a direction that we could truly call it intelligent building automation. And that's what Machine Halo is helping to drive.
Hey, thank you everybody on the demo team. Awesome. You guys only ran over by like 15 minutes, no problem. Now we're only 30 minutes late, but no problem. For those of you who don't know this young man, this is Mike Mitchell, Cochrane Supplies, Chief Technology Officer. And as you can see, there is no way we could do this without Mike as well. So thank you, Mikey, for all your help today. Yep, awesome. All right. Okay, so on to our first keynote speaker. So this gentleman hails from Western Canada, Victoria Island to be specific. This person, he has been writing about the BAS industry for as long as I've been in it. When we first started doing automation and the internet actually first started, he was my beacon out on the internet saying, hey, there's people doing this stuff, check it out. And geez, for the last 18, 19 years, I've used his all the information he's brought, and I've used that to mold Cochrane Supply to what it is today. So with that, I would like to introduce Ken Sinclair with Automated Buildings.
Thank you. I'll stand right over here. That sounds good. Thank you, Scott. I've never been a keynote before, and it'll become immediately obvious. But anyway, I'm going to talk about the next 50 years because I'm pretty sure you guys followed our last 50 years pretty close on automated buildings. And Jane and I have been in the business for 50 years. We were originally energy and automation consultants. And we did that for 30 years. Then we retired, and we just about killed each other. And then we started Automated Buildings. And it was a good time because it was at the start of when the internet was new and our industry was quite fragmented, and pulling it all together with a bunch of URLs seemed quite useful. But my theme is the next 50 years, and what can an old guy from the last 50 years tell you about the next 50 years? So what happens is I take a look at it, just a broad brush of what went on in those 50 years, and I can't believe it. It was not about the technology. Although I was a technocrat, I basically got involved in it. I was excited. In the final analysis, what remains is the people and the communities of practice that they created. That's all that's left. And the technology rapidly, it's still some of it underlying and installed, but it's not that important. What is important on the projects is the people we can reach out to, the communities we can reach out to, and of course, Cochrane is a community of practice. And that's probably why you're all here, because it provides continuity and strength. So this whole concept of a community of practice, it's kind of snuck up on me because we were actually doing a session at AHR Atlanta, and the theme was From Ethernet to Emotion. And Therese Sullivan was with us, and she pointed out that no technology can kind of move ahead without a community of practice. I hadn't really heard that term before, so we followed it out, and Therese wrote us an article explaining a little bit more of what she was talking about. And since then, we've basically started doing a little bit more research into that. And it's becoming a very important thing because we're heading into a jungle of communities of practice. We're basically, the amount of technologies you're going to have to deal with in your 50 years is incredibly more than the amount I had to deal with. And there was a lot. So what we have to do is, what are we building our companies with? It's the people. And as people that are aging, how do we solve that problem? And of course, the solution is simple. We just simply grow younger. And how do we grow younger? We basically reach out to our younger mentors. We are digital immigrants. I found that interesting when I kind of came to that conclusion. We don't know the language. Generally speaking, folks of my era or close don't understand the language. We have to convert almost everything from analog and get our minds around it to move ahead. As soon as we start reaching out to the digital native folks, our younger mentors, it becomes a lot clearer as to what, how they think that way and how all of these pieces fit together. And the common theme I get back from my younger mentors, we've actually just signed up 4 contributing editors, under 40 and some under 30. And what their feedback is they say, you should see what those kids are thinking. And who are those kids? Those kids are the digital enhanced, the digital, they don't know anything other than digital. They don't know reality. They probably cannot function in reality, but they can very much function in a digital world. And those are the kids that are going to bring us into artificial intelligence, augmented, and all of these new concepts. How that's going to happen is we need to compete with all of the other industries that are in the IoT industry, because we're all basically trying to catch up to catch the same people. And as Christine pointed out, some of our slides are quite boring, and we have to make them a lot more exciting. And I think we need to, as an industry, try and embellish the exciting parts of our industry and get that message out to these younger people so they are interested in coming into our employment. How we do that is interesting. Yesterday I think it was, we took a tour with Bedrock and with the ambassador of Chicago. And that was neat because Chicago has an ambassador. We as an industry need to have several ambassadors that basically go out and sell our industry to the universities and other areas where we might get new people. In addition to that, we need to shake a gender preference we've had as an industry, and we need to reach out to the women. We need to bring them into our industry. Our industry is growing. It's very flexible. We can have people work from almost anywhere. And there's another trend that's happening is a lot of the tasks that were done in our companies by women are being automated or computerized or virtualized in some manner. So it's important that we look at how we can repurpose these folks into our companies. How can we best do that and let them basically define their own job? Another term I just came across shortly that made me think a whole lot was a term called job crafting. I'd not heard that term before. And the idea is when a new employee comes, they tell you what is the job they want to do for you. They may actually create a job that brings extra value to your company. That's an interesting concept. I hadn't thought about it that much, but they're coming from either being digital natives or digitally augmented, and they have a whole different view of how they see your business being done. Having this discussion with them and basically asking them, how do you want to craft your job? How do you see your fit in this company? That's an interesting concept. So we need to do that. We have an article on our magazine this month, and that's exactly what it's talking about, is job crafting to try and get some of the people in the positions we need. Because the position we have in mind may not in fact be the position that they have in mind, and so we both walk away as losers if we actually listen to how they think they should do their job and from where and how many hours they should spend at it. It's a whole different in-between ground that we need to talk about. And I'm going to have to reach in my pocket and get my phone because I'm running out of memory as to what else I was going to talk about. Let me see what else. Oh, the auto industry. That's interesting. Autonomous cars are becoming a thing. And I think we as an industry can learn a lot from autonomous cars. We've had Suha write a few articles for us lately. She's a professor at Stanford, and she's in the autonomous vehicle space. Some of the stuff they are doing, the amount of research and the amount of money they're throwing at that is, I think, of interest. We need to kind of watch that, because the whole idea of taking a moving vehicle and making it autonomous is a very complex. It should be easy peasy for us to make our buildings augmented, or what's the word I'm looking for? I just lost it there for a moment. Anyway, the whole idea that what the automotive industry is doing in autonomous interaction was the word I was looking for. So we need to do that, and that's exactly what was being displayed here, is basically the camera looking at us and recording information so we don't have to use a device. When I was in Helsinki, I first ran across that, the deviceless interface. And it's like, what? How can you have a deviceless interface? And in truth, you don't have a deviceless interface, but you have a relationship that basically occurs without you pulling your phone out of your pocket. So anyway, that's another interesting field that's coming out. And we hope to keep moving ahead for another 50 years and keep informing you as Automated Buildings. let you catch up some time.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job. It was good. So Ken, we gave him a tour of Detroit yesterday, and he liked it so much he thought he was in Chicago. How's that for Detroit, huh? We're coming around, right? Yeah? I mean, Ken and Jane, thank you again for coming. You guys made a long trip. Great. So our next keynote, Cochrane Supply. We've developed a fantastic relationship with the new vendor across over the last couple years. That vendor is Acuity Brands. And Acuity Brands is an awesome vision of the industry as far as we're concerned in terms of unified control of lighting and mechanical systems, we believe is a way going forward. And Acuity has just done an awesome job of helping us get into that business. And with that, I would like to introduce the president of Acuity Technologies, Laurent Vernoret. Perfect. Was that good?
That sounds good.
Thank you, Laurent. Thank you. Wonderful.
I love your Detroit accent.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Well, Scott, thank you for inviting us today. I like a few things you said. First of all, what I like is you leading the industry to think differently. And when you invited me to speak, this is where I decided to embrace that. The industry is on the move, and if it is not yet on the move, it better be on the move. Now, when Scott let me get on stage, he doesn't know what he's going to get. And so since today, at this time of the day, is usually my nap time, and it's probably yours too, I'm going to ask a few exercises to make sure that I have you full and divided attention. If you are a partner, vendor in this room, can you stand up right now? And in this case, scratch your back with one and then the other one. And if you are a contractor, a system integrator, and so on, please stand up as well. And scratch your back on each side and so on. Who am I forgetting, Scott, that would be in the room?
Just the Scott Cochrane fans
And then
that just come to watch.
all of Scott's team, please stand up.
No fans.
And then scratch your back, same thing. So now I have you undivided attention. Please sit down. What I'd like to do is share with you a story. And Scott, for that story, I'm going to need a clicker. And the clicker is the one that allows me to switch my slides from one to the other. I came out of retirement 15 months ago to join Acuity Brands. I had a career with Schneider Electric. I ended up being the CEO of Schneider Electric in North America. You probably know the different brands of Schneider Electric, Square D, and different controls. Thank you, Mike. This is why he's the Chief Technology Officer. He controls everything. And I decided to come to actually engage in a journey that is exciting, challenging and disruptive at the same time. And that's the story that I would like to share with you. What is the key question for me that I decided that it was really interesting, not just for an audience, not just for myself, but as an industry. A simple way of summarizing what's happening is, how are we going to get ready for the next generation of connected buildings? So we can use a lot of buzzwords with it, but the first question that we can all have for ourselves is that why connected building is so important. 90% of our time is spent inside of a building. And actually, we know very little of what's happening. I like the demonstrations that were done before, Scott, to show again, do we know who's in the building? Do we know where they are in the building? So you think of a space that we spend more than 90% of our time, and actually we know very little. We're in the early days. We know how to control what's happening in the building, but we don't know really what's going to make a difference. So our view is, if we accept that the building is where we spend most of our time, it is grand time to shift from thinking of it as a cost center, so my building is costing me that much, to actually thinking of a building as a strategic asset. And the value of that strategic assets, and that's, I thank Albert for introducing that as well, as you know, the famous JLL study about where do you get value, strategic value out of your building, it increases around two axes. If you look at it, there is what we call the connectivity and intelligence of a building, and then the strategic value. And you travel over that time. And Ken, you reminded us, we span, especially for you and I being of the same generation, we spent 20, 25 years really focusing on energy management. And we still have plenty to get. I don't know if you have seen the latest press release from Target. I was going to make a promise. I didn't bring a demo because I just have to send you to a Target store. And if you have the Target app, you can see what indoor positioning at grand scale looks like. But with Target, for instance, when we changed 2 million lights in a record time, and for all of their 1,800 stores, we took the equivalent of 470 million megawatts of electricity. There is still a huge entitlement for us to go down. Whether we go at it through a building management system or through lighting, there is still a large entitlement there. And we should never forget that. Even though I agree that we need to be able to shift, the first value that is available to us, not just in short term, but in the long term, is energy savings, and we need to stay focused on that. But then, again, yes, we need to evolve, and space management, we discussed, there was a great way of looking at that, the productivity, asset management, all of that is about the building performance. And probably, as Ken was saying, where are we going to travel for the next, whatever, 10, 15 years? This is the space that we're going to travel. And when Scott presents all of the technologies that he's so astute in pursuing is, how do you make all of that happen? So it has to do with the building performance. You always also need to think further and ahead of time as to what is the next strategic value for a building. And this is what we call the business performance. Something is always happening in the building, right? Our kids are at school right now. Well, what we want them is to be really taught very well. And even as simple as it may sound, the environment that they spend so much time is part of the overall performance of the school system. So you can think in values of education, or you can think of values to increase what is happening on your shop floor, if it's a manufacturing shop floor, or in the retail store. So we see that as the platform, as the evolution of what we call strategic buildings, from building performance to business performance. That's a great slide, looks good, we have all of this. Of course, all of this is what everybody wants. How you make that happen. And this is the journey I would like to share with you is, why do I believe that we are at a turning point, and it's going to take all of the vendors here. This is why I like working with Scott, because Scott is not single-minded about one technology, one vendor. He touches on so many of us, and I believe it's going to take an industry, and it's going to take multiple players. Who knew that Isaiah was going to present to us, facial recognition, and that could be part of a conference when we actually all from the world of BMS. Changing really fast. So our view of the connected building, you can see it. I hope this is where you've been traveling today, between a connected building, which is your typical building. You get your standalone system. You move on to a more holistic view. You have some optimization for energy. Our view is, as you travel, you're going to get your building which is connected and is allowing for a smart business. Again, to keep things in perspective, while you may have a vision of what it gets, you need to have a roadmap by which you're going to get to that vision of extracting the different element of the value. So again, those elements are valid whether you're still chasing the energy, but they're even more relevant and necessary if you're going to go and get the business value out of your building. So again, here, nothing different. For some of you, it may look maybe very simple. Of my 30 years in the business, I have yet to find anything simple in the integration of all of those technologies. But if you follow pretty much, sorry, I gotta go this way. On this side is what we've all worked, digital controls, lighting controls, HVAC. Moving into sensory network, this is where all of this conference is about. If we want to know what's happening in a building, we need to sensorize the hell out of any buildings. And whether we do it with one technology or the other is of importance, but the main thing is where does the data goes? Getting to the first phase, which is location aware, and then moving into what we're going to use as far as a digital platform. So you recognize a lot of what Scott presented and what he's doing in complementing his portfolio. Our journey here is really informed by why is the time now? I think you called us in the video, Scott, right? It said time is now. That's, I think, what it is. Here is my view why the time is now and if we miss this opportunity. On one side here, there are business trends that we can take advantage of. And I would say on this one, we could be repeating a lot of the things we read in newspaper. For a group like ourselves together, it's more on this side that we know things are changing fast, specifically with the cost. You know, I heard the sensor maybe $5. Well, $5 is still a lot of money, depending on how many sensors do you put in a room. So all of that traveling, the cost equation, so for all of the components of those technologies, that is what is changing really fast. Bluetooth, low energy, if you pick this, edge computing, we talked about microservices. This is what's happening today, which is happening faster than any of us can really keep up with. And therefore, it has created an ecosystem of companies, startups, as well as bigger corporations that are really trying to garner all of this and take advantage. So for us, we try to bring it to a simple value prop and say, okay, if we're gonna go chase something, what is the #1 value? And it really is around these indoor location services. And you can read what Gartner has published when they were kind enough to put us in their magic quadrant and say, okay, Acquity Brands, we believe, is really thinking that through. But the basis for their assessment was indoor location services is going to be something of the future. We're not going to be able to avoid it. We could say that's too complicated. We're going to have to make it happen. So how do we go about capturing this opportunity? Our view is to try to keep it simple. So some of us in the room have been probably burned. I've lost my hair really early in my life doing some integration of systems and then doing different things. The keeping it simple is really accomplished by having a clear journey of the different phases, the different steps you're going to take in that journey. One, what I call the good enough today. And we need to accept that there's still going to be a big chunk of the market that's going to be happy with the good enough. Basic LED, basic controls. You understand now I have brought into the conversation lighting as a principal hardware component today in any building, and therefore I'm of course bringing LED. You're going to have the just enough, and that just enough right now is being defined. And it's being defined because we are now, for the first time, starting to see deployment at scale, which means that it's no longer something that's possible, it's actually something that is available at scale on the technology side, on the access side, that means you have large deployment, but also you can make money doing this, and that's not easy for everybody. So it's connected LED, it's a unified building and lighting infrastructure and controls, and it's the smart visualization. And I know there is plenty, I mean, with Tridium and others, we believe that visualization is going to continue to have a great value. But then what's next? And what do we need to really pressure test. If you look at the choices, everybody here in this room, whether it's myself in my job where I pick a technology versus another, whether it's you guys, signing up a contract with one of your clients, you make choices every day, technology choices and how you do. I'm always trying to think as to what's going to be future-proof. Future-proof for me is I have no regret of the choice I've made. I'm not going to use an excuse later on, and it's no nonsense. It is really making sense. And so this is where I'm putting this as a journey for the industry. My mission inside of the Acuity Brands Group is actually not only to make sure that we bring the best technologies available, and I'll tell you why Distech was acquired and why it is at the core of the architecture. It's the best IP controllers you can find. It has many different components, but it is now centered as a technology brick for that whole integration. So great, we have that product, it is known, people can look at it, you can actually hack it, you can try to do so many things with it, the technology is there. That technology means very little if we cannot deploy it in a frictionless environment. And my simple equation in front of you is that if we together do not find a way to take 30% of the time it takes us to implement the technology, from the time you design it, from the time you validate it, you quote it, you finally get it installed, commission, and so on, we got to take 30%. We have two reasons for having to do this. We don't have enough people. I don't know about you guys, but the labor market is quite tight for all of the technology guys, and it is even more tighter from what I understand if you need some technicians. So if we don't take that 30%, we're going to be always slow down because we don't have enough people to respond. So there is that imperative. The second piece is because it is still taking too long, and the time it takes, it's probably because the technology is still having too much friction. Decision makers are going to say, you know what, my good enough is good enough. And I'm not going to really chance it with your just enough, going to future-proof, et cetera. I'm going to stick with this. And therefore, as an industry, we're missing out on the great opportunity to double the size of what we do in dollar terms. So that's why I'm talking about this. The rest is what we all know, advanced controls and IoT capabilities, firmware upgrade, the world where self-serving is becoming the rule. I think, again, if you project ourselves to our children as what they do, no, you don't want to have a facility manager to go to. You want immediately the actions to be taken based on the input that you're giving. So it's always offering what I call a self-serve model where you can do it on your own. Autonomy of actions instead of, okay, I'm going to have to call somebody. So we have to think our systems in this way. The building health, if we truly deliver on the promise that we're going to know what's happening in the building, and we're going to sensorize really massively the building, we're going to have an imperative to measure the health of what's happening in the building. And that health can be very simple things, knowing what's happening to a critical component or what's happening for the people inside of that building. How am I doing with time? It says 7 minutes. You still giving me the 7 minutes? All right, I'll take the 7 minutes and 28 seconds. So I joined Acuity Brands after many years in your field of BMS, in the field of electrical distribution, and really discovered the virtue of leveraging lights that are, no matter what, everywhere in any building. If we are inside of a building, there's going to be light somewhere. And you can read just as much here, the slides. It's one thing to know about it intellectually, that yes, it's always there, it's always powered, it has the right density for you to do what you need to do. It's another one to translate that into a technology that really gives you a sensory network. And this slide in the minutes is just our vision about what we want to do, so you recognize the world that we come from, that we are in, BMS and lighting control. But what really is going to make the big difference, and I think Isaiah was from Cisco. Cisco has recognized that. But inside of a buildings, it's going to be your sensory network and how you manage that at scale, along with all the apps. And we've seen some good examples. So that's our roadmap. How are we executing that roadmap? Acuity Brands has been highly acquisitive. And it is the third transformation that Acuity Brands. And that's why I joined them, is to help them for that third one. The first one, you may have known that if you've been in a business, Acuity Brands with an S, they acquired the best brands that you can find in luminaires and pretty much became equals to the GE Lighting, to the Cooper of the world, and GE I mentioned of this. That's the first transformation, creating a portfolio. The second transformation was LED. When you look, the LED transformation started, whatever, 7, 8 years ago. 7 years later, Acuity Brands is twice the size than GE, Philips, and Cooper. Something happened, and this is what we're trying to repeat. There was an acceleration. That's what I'm trying to show through this slide. And it was mainly the fact that when technology suddenly accelerates, and Scott, you said something about the technology that suddenly takes off. If you're not ready, you may have been the visionary, you're not going to grasp it. That's what they have done during those years. What is today at stake for us is to also capture the third transformation, which is really to use an integrated or unified platform of lighting and building controls, a sensory network in the lights, as well as a software platforms or IoT platforms that allows us to really deliver the value. And the recent acquisitions since I joined are Lucid, you've heard, maybe to continue to focus on enabling our facility managers to capture all of the energy savings and other software platforms. So that's the journey we've been on. And if you get lost into, well, great, but it's a little bit confusing, some of the names that you may or may not know in your industry. So you, of course, know Distech. Distech, I've been impressed since I used to not know them at all in my prior life, has taken the world by storm with being the first one to really present an advanced IP technology in controllers. In my home country, which is not Boston. Some of you may be confused because I live in Boston with my accent. My accent is not from Boston. I was born and raised in France, and they took the market by storm, where pretty much every new high towers in the Paris area, 80% of that is built with Distech controls. And again, our plan is to do the same in New York and Toronto, et cetera, et cetera. So Distech, wonderful. In the center, you see Nlyte. Those of you that may have been involved in integrating building controls with lighting controls. Nlyte now, even though it's not the brand that is most known, is the #1 lighting control system available in the US, as far as number of square foot and installation. And then on the side of the software companies, we continue to add on to make sure that we have a fulsome solution here for the strategic building. So I'm going to leave you with this, ask you 2 questions. It's time, and maybe there will be a good entrance for our panel discussion. Are you getting future ready? I can share with you everything I'm trying to do. We're trying to think that through. We're trying to partner with the best. We're trying to think large with also the help of not just big corporations, but also startups. How are you getting ready here? And that's the challenge. How are you ready? How are we ready to take 30% less time on every job? Again, in the 1 minute and 54 seconds, I'm not going to give you a technical briefing, but the team of Distech is over there. I have asked them specifically when I came in to change where we were spending our money. Because Distech came from such a strong background in technology and products, that's where the money was. And I reallocated a massive amount of money to actually develop tools you're going to see called VEX, et cetera, so that we can actually enable the removal of this time and the complexity associated with this. But how are you ready to take advantage of that? We need to change. We need to be ready to embrace that change. And the key to really staying competitive is in our hands. So, as a last question, which we can again address, are you ready to leverage the technology to grow your own business right here by taking this 30%? That's the journey I would like us to go on together, Scott. Thank you for letting us come here on stage and share with you our journey.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Laurent, that was fantastic. It's my first time seeing him speak, and wow, that was good. I'm truly impressed. So, yeah, we really have enjoyed learning so much from Acuity, and how they're looking at the market has really helped us to better understand products and services we think we can help you guys with. And so another great relationship we have, long-time relationship. I mean, Cochrane Supply's first vendor 51 years ago was this company called Penn, right? Eventually it became a company called Johnson Controls. And we've been selling Johnson Controls for as long as I can remember. And when I was at AHR, of course, me being the technology snob, I'm over there poking the Johnson folks, like, what you got, right? And this gentleman kind of popped his head in there and started talking to me, and I'm like, wow, this guy's interesting, right? And so Johnson Controls is going through an evolution right now, and it's super interesting. And with us today, we have Jim Morris, Executive Vice President of Building Controls for Johnson Controls, and he's going to come, and General Manager, and he's going to come give us a little glimpse of what they're working on. Jim Morris. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having us here. So I've been in the industry now a whole eight and a half months, so take it easy on me a little bit. I'm not ready yet to say that I'm thinking differently. I'm just not thinking right yet. So I spent probably most of the last 18 years at Western Digital and Seagate, and that means there's probably about an 82.3% chance that the data that you own and store is on a Western Digital or Seagate storage system or component. And being in the technology industry for a long time, and we're talking a lot about technology today and what it's going to mean to our businesses, you just have to be paranoid. And you got to find your energy, right? Your energy is to go win and to take advantage of this disruption and the opportunities that we're going to talk about. But you can also find your energy by being paranoid. And there's always somebody coming after you. And I've had two kind of formative things that have really kind of helped prepare me for that. One, early in my career, I was an intelligence officer in the Army, and that kind of makes you paranoid. You got to find the bad guys over the hill and go get at them before they get at you. And then the other, which was much more formative, was growing up as a tortured Philadelphia sports fan. And I've seen every collapse possible. I've seen Gary Maddox drop fly balls. I've seen interceptions. I've seen overtime goals let up. And even when the Eagles kind of got the monkey off their back and won their Super Bowl a couple years ago, there's no doubt in my mind that when Nick Foles and the Eagles were going down the field to win, to beat New Orleans in the playoffs last year, and there's no doubt in my mind that there was going to be an interception thrown, and lo and behold, there was. So I guess with that type of, I think, mindset and opportunity, this is a great time to be in this industry, and it's really what drew me here is the scale and the opportunity and the things that we can make happen. The physics around the technology is real. And what we're talking about a lot more at Johnson Controls is the things on the left side of the page are going to make the right happen. And it's really about how do you let the technology win? How do you kind of let it flow, and how do you take advantage of it and not fight it? It's going to take time, but these things are real. I mean, what compute is doing, the cost of compute, what it's enabling at the edge. We were looking at frictionless camera access earlier today. The amount of processing that can happen, the identity management that can happen is remarkable. What's happening with bandwidth, some of it's hype today, some of it's real, but no doubt it's going to have a really profound impact on the architecture in our devices. And then what's happening in storage not only is allowing a ton of processing and caching to happen at the edge, but it's also allowing some incredibly sophisticated learning and algorithms that are happening in the cloud. So all of these things that we talk about, I mean, the architecture of the future and where it's going, it's going to happen. And it's going to happen at different rates and at different times and in different markets and different segments. We got to be thoughtful about it. But this bifurcation between things happening at the edge and things going to the cloud is real. Things are going to be software defined. Things are going to be interoperable. And the amount of learning and processing and intelligence that's going to happen, it's indisputable. And so you look at, I mean, this is our portfolio or my portfolio at Johnson Controls with our building management systems. I mean, you could just look at this page. I mean, this is a page that's over the next 5 years is going to look very, very different. And for those of you, when we talk about the innovator's dilemma, we're going to have choices to face as an industry. How much do we want to go attack ourselves and put some of our legacy business at risk to go drive things more aggressively? But you can see this. I mean, everything is going to an IP network, as Scott talked about. Things are going to flatten, and things are going to converge. And yeah, it's a great time to be alive and take advantage of that. So how does this play out? If you kind of think about kind of how things have evolved, historically, I think you'd see things happening from left to right. Legacy systems, there wasn't a lot of intelligence, wasn't a lot of, analytics. Now you get into, individual systems, they're smarter, they're able to perform functions and provide analytics in their world more effectively. Basic integrations happen, you have basic use cases that happen. But now we're getting into this world where it's very easy for integrations to be occurring above, at a server level and above. And now the opportunity to interconnect lots of different types of data sources and to provide a lot more interesting use cases. And of course, we'll get to our 330, 300 chart here in a little bit. But ultimately, then, we see this opportunity where we can really drive convergence and where our stacks and our technology can become really a lot more integrated. And that's when we can really get to a point where you can drive use cases, things that happen really close to the data. So the frictionless access case that we were looking at earlier, obviously, we all know that's going to change. Now it's going to be when Scott walks up and Scott's picture appears, it's going to also tell the store and the retailer how often Scott's been to the store, how often he stood in a certain aisle, what he was looking to shop, what his purchase history has been. And that's when you can make those types of things happen in a converged way, really close to the data, then you've really got some power. What's different, though, I think, and we're a little bit of paranoia for us as an industry comes in, is historically this would happen from left to right. There's a lot of folks that are coming after us in any phase today, over the top. The ability for non-traditional competitors to come in and to help do integrations and assemble and aggregate data and then create applications above us. And if the imperative for us to partner is to avoid ourselves becoming disintermediated and to be able to create value much higher in the food chain for what the customer is after. So, for us, the trick is we think that you have to walk and chew gum as you do this. Actually, it's more like about run and jog and chew gum. Because this transformation, there's no doubt this is going to happen, but it's going to play out in different times, at different paces, in different channels and in different regions. I mean, you know, some of the things that you look at that's going on right now, probably the most leading edge smart building technology adoption is probably happening outside the US. And that has a lot to do with kind of the channel structure. A lot's happening in the Middle East, a lot's happening in Singapore. So it's very important for us to continue to listen to our customers and to continue to drive excellence in our existing products. And then we're going to talk about kind of a future architecture and what that looks like and how do we make that happen and how do these things kind of come together. So we've spent a lot of time, you know, as I've spent with, you know, with our team and with our customers, really listen to our customers. We spent, you know, thousands of hours, you know, really trying to understand how do we really make our controls products great. So we put a ton of investment in them. And we've done a lot from an integration standpoint. We put a ton of investment and a ton of recruitment in cybersecurity in terms of how we build a team, how we embed it into our product development process, how do we go back and solidify some of our older generation products, you know, how do we become really leading edge in that? You know, what are the analytics and optimizations that we can build within buildings? And we spent a ton on user experience in terms of making the user experience a lot more simpler and a lot more intuitive. You know, we recognize where the world's going. We're adapting our architecture. We're going to be proactive in terms of how we flatten things, how we take layers out. You know, we're partnering with other IT folks. Scott talked about that. You know, this IT-OT convergence is really important. You know, we have a very close relationship with Cisco. As you know, as many of the other folks are talking about, different types of relationships and partnerships are just so critical. So how do we build an architecture that's more resilient, more secure, more cyber secure? And then how do we add, you know, kind of remote control, remote connectivity to this, so ultimately, you know, we can start to disaggregate, you know, kind of how our control systems work. And then we also are looking at, you know, historically in technology, you get attacked from the bottom up. And it's very important for us to have a full portfolio. And so we put a lot of time into talking with contractors and really understand how do we help you deploy solutions at a lot lower cost. And you know, we came up with, you know, just this notion of really just taking as much manual stuff out of this process as possible. So to make it real simple to activate, to turn on, to commission, and then to get analytics into a useful and data into a useful place. We spent a lot of time doing that. And that's really one of the things that out of this was born our product called Verisys, which is really aimed at how do we you know, make a much more self-configuring tool. And it's real simple the way it works. You know, you turn on a sensor, you connect a smart device. It's recognized, you turn it on. It's recognized by an I/O device. A smart building hub recognizes it. And the data goes to the cloud. And all you got to do is basically give it an address. And the rest is handled for you. I mean, I think about this from a value perspective about, you know, where the world in the PC world was. It used to be brain surgery to put a PC together. And just think about how over time the value is transferred from that integration to the value and the outcomes and the applications that you can run on the PC. So this is really important to us, and here's a demonstration of just how it can happen. Turns on, connects, it's found. You give it a name, and it's up. And it's talking to the cloud. You know, no provisioning, and additional work, tools that have to be downloaded, software you have to purchase, graphics, programming, analytical tools. It's done. And I think understanding this and how we can continue to bring this capability into our products is going to be really important. The other is then, where are things going? And you know, it's good to be a little bit skeptical when we talk about disruption and how does it happen. It's good to be skeptical and to really challenge yourselves and understand why and when. Because you always are wondering, is it worse to be too late or is it worse to be too early, right? Because if you have a false start, you lose a ton of momentum in your organization. We got scarce resources. What are you going to deploy people against? Things are starting to go there. We go out and we talk a lot to our customers. That's one of the advantages that we think of having a great channel is to really get feedback. And we talk about the investments that people are looking at. This is from going out and talking to about 1,200 facility managers. And really a lot of the investments that they're looking to drive are around integrations and things that you can do with integrations and outcomes that you can drive within buildings. So here's our chart. I think tonight at the awards dinner, we should do is probably have like a vote who has the best 330 or 300 square foot chart. We believe this is real. We're seeing this happen. We're seeing customers come to us for these types of solutions. What's really important is being able to understand how to focus and what's gonna go, because I believe that we have a library of like 1,500 use cases that customers are going to want to deploy. Well, it's really important to understand which of those are going to be the most important. What are those are going to deliver a return on investment? So it's really to understand where to focus on this, and then also how to be able to scale it and to be really good at it in terms of how do you build an architecture that allows that to happen? How do you get the data out? And not just how do you get the data out, but how do you make sense of it? How do you add context to it? How do you add a time series to it so that it knows that it's Scott's office and Scott did the following 6 things, and then make that easy and open for a developer to write applications on top of in addition to yourself. So this looks easy. This is an easy thing to draw. I think it's a very hard thing to execute. And what it really requires is a lot of interaction with us and with our customers to really understand what's important. Because when you talk to them, in a lot of cases, this all sounds great, right? There's a lot of PowerPoints, a lot of great concepts, but there's sometimes a struggle with how do I really articulate that value? And somebody's going to say, wait a second, you're going to help me in my business productivity? Wait a second, no, that's not something for you to do. Well, maybe it's not, and there's ways that we can partner. But I think one of the things that we're investing in a lot is the front end of this from an innovation standpoint. And when we've talked about in the past user experience, we've thought about it in terms of the industrial design of our products. But it really becomes engaging with the customer about their business model. And it's not getting, you're not trying to run their business, but how do I really understand your business and your business model so I can really innovate with you about what are some sensible things that I can do, and to do that with the customer. So, design thinking is something that, is a concept that's really important to us as an industry to really kind of pull things out of our customers about what do they really need. So I think we're at the front end of that journey right now. That's why when people talk about, I thought, Laurent, kind of laid out kind of where things are going very well. You think about what inning are we in right now? I mean, to me, it kind of feels like we're in the 2nd inning, but we had a long spring training. There's a long lead up to this, but it's incumbent on us to really get our arms around, what are our customers really after here? Because they're not gonna pay us for vaporware, and we don't have the time to waste doing that. So, from our perspective, we're thinking about, kind of what does this architecture of the future look like? And, we've got to position ourselves to do that together with you. We think that when you kind of talk about a lot of systems and devices hanging off of a much simpler infrastructure, scale and scope really help, and it really matters. It'll help you from a cost standpoint. It helps you, we think earlier about, kind of plugging and playing. If you can do that intelligently with equipment and commission equipment a lot smarter and faster, but you can make the equipment do more things, and then also enable use cases right at where the data is occurring. So you don't have to send it all the way up to the cloud. Things can happen in you know, right in the occupant zone where it's critical, where the data is being captured. So, I mean, we think that, you know, being able to partner, but having a very strong foundation, that's why, you know, from our perspective, having the portfolio breadth that we have gives us a seat at the table to talk about all of these things. I couldn't agree more with the conversation earlier about video. Video as a sensor is critical. So we look at our security business. We used to run our security business as 3 separate things: an intrusion business, a video, and an access control business. That's silly. So we put the access control and the video business together for the reasons that you just saw here today. And as a sensor, there's just so many things that video can enable. So having that scope in your portfolio is really important and critical. So these things are happening. They're real. Now this is an example just of a simple integration and the type of business value that you can generate. I think for those of you know, on a like-for-like basis in a hospital, the energy per square foot in a hospital is about 3x what a normal building is. Because it's 100% outside air coming in, you have massive pressure differentials. So being able to impact and understand your set points, airflows, and ventilation is really, really important. Well, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out if I'm not taking advantage of the utilization within a building and understanding the patterns, I'm leaving a lot of money on the table. So just by doing some simple integrations, it's a hospital down in Indiana, I mean, $6,000 per surgical suite, that's real money when you look at the occupancy rates and how often a building isn't occupied. Another proof point that this is happening is just an example that we just had with a company called BIA over in the Middle East. It's in the UAE. It's the largest environmental services and waste management firm in the Middle East. And we spent a lot of time with them. And to our point about partnership, we did it very closely with Microsoft in both combining our AI with their AI. And we've enabled all of these things are going to be deployed here over the next 6 months. You start with smart parking lots, smart lobbies, frictionless access, smart visitor management, smart spaces, smart conferences rooms, smart cafeterias, right? You need a very agile architecture to be able to do that. You need a lot of IP to be able to do that in terms of how you pull data out of a building, how you process it, how you store it, what types of things that you can do in terms of how you process it, how you process things at the edge. That's something when you're talking with partners, your commitment from an R&D standpoint, not just that, but your ability to be agile and partner with other folks is really critical. I mean, we have about 340 patents in this area, and we can't go fast enough. We can't go fast enough. And we can't partner fast enough. And that's, I think, one of the challenges, I think, with our industry is, the historic pace doesn't necessarily force us to go fast. And therefore, we have time to do it on our own. Well, sometimes you move a lot faster by partnering with folks. And by the way, some of the folks that you're partnering with also may want to be competing with you. So in terms of agility and kind of, mind expansion, it's a great time. It's a great time to kind of exercise our thinking in this and exercise that gene that really wants to go disrupt and win, but also run and chew gum and execute at the same time. So anyway, really excited to be here, excited to get more feedback from you, and also to get your perspectives on what's real and what's not. Our time is our most precious asset, and how we spend it together is really going to be what makes us successful. So thanks very much. Go Eagles.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. That was awesome. What did you call frictionless? What was it? I'm still on that term from you. Frictionless access? Is that what you call it? frictionless access. I love that term, right? So, yeah, so it just happens automatically. And that's something that, again, I mentioned earlier and Isaiah showed, and obviously Johnson Controls is well invested in. And it's really exciting. Thank you for that, Jim. Great presentation. Okay, so our next speaker, so as we go forward, Tritium Niagara is a platform that we all use. We have all used it for quite a while now. And in the Tritium world, there's always this one person whom has to be responsible for all of what's in that software. And as people take on that role over the years, it's a tough role to have because you think of all the things that Niagara can do, all those features, and to have that power over that direction of what that software is doing is quite a feat. So our next speaker, he has been in this role for, I want to say 3 years? 3 years now. And has quietly added features that we believe are earth-shaking in how Niagara can help people achieve what they want with these IoT infrastructures of the future. And so with that, I want to introduce the Chief Technology Officer at Tritium, Kevin Smith.
Thanks. I am so excited to be here. Today and tomorrow, you're going to see and hear some amazing things. And what I love about being here is I love this group because you are all innovators. You turn ideas into reality. And I know because I've seen it. And so I'm really looking forward to the conversations that we're going to have over the next couple of days. So what I thought I would do is just very quickly talk about some of the changes that we're seeing in business and technology in buildings. And traditionally, as we've all known, building systems have been looked at as ways to save energy and reduce facilities costs. I think every speaker has actually said that today. But what's really changing is that people are realizing what you all have realized for some time. There is so much more that you can do. And this is really exciting. And so we're now in the reality where your building can detect who you are and adapt to you. Change your environment based on who you are and what your preferences are, right? We know that because we've done it. We're now at a point where your building, based on where you are in it, can send you real-time information based on who you are, what you need to do, and what you need to see, and where you are in the building. And customers are really getting that. We've seen some of that today. There are new devices in your building that historically haven't been connected to building systems. There are more technologies in your building that you historically haven't connected, and more systems and more infrastructure that you historically haven't connected. And people are realizing that we can now connect all that together. And that's really exciting. And the technologies are changing. As we've seen, there's sensors that can detect presence, right? Can determine identity, can count occupancy. There are even some sound sensors that can detect distinctive sounds like the sound of gunfire and can trigger alerts in life safety situations, right? And we can integrate these all together. Machine learning, AI, face recognition, like what we saw today. And this is great. From our perspective at Tritium, we are excited about this because this is what Niagara was made for. As you know, the value proposition of Niagara is openness and flexibility and extensibility to allow you to adapt to new technologies, to connect to new devices so that you can control them, so that you can monitor them, so you can take data from them, to connect to new protocols, and to integrate with more systems. Everything we do at Tridium is to facilitate that and to enable you to do that and to connect with new things. And of course, you all know that because you're doing it today. Many of you have been along with us on this journey for a very long time, and so you know all this stuff, and you're connecting to new devices. You're integrating with new technologies, and it is very exciting for us. And I just realized that a dog was right behind me. I didn't mean to forward that far. However, what I love about my job is I get to visit sites that use Niagara. And so I thought I'd tell you something about one site, which is why a dog is right behind me right now. I visited a major airport, and it was really cool. It's about 10 million square feet of space where Niagara controls just about everything. Lighting, HVAC, but also escalators, elevators, baggage carousels. But what I didn't realize is that dogs have a really big impact on airports. I didn't really think about it. I don't know if you have. Apparently, a lot of dogs go to the airport. So there's service dogs for people with various disabilities. And TSA uses dogs for sniffing luggage, et cetera. And they all need somewhere to go to the bathroom. And this could be a real big problem because you have to have space for them to go to the bathroom. And then it could be a real big mess. And why is everything... I feel like this thing is automatically going forward. It could be a real big mess, right? So the integrator in this case created an automated pet relief area. So it detects the dog's presence. It detects when the dog is doing its duty. And then when the area is unoccupied, it cleans up the pet relief area automatically. This is innovation. This is really exciting. I could have never thought of it, right? We build a flexible framework to allow you to take your ideas and make them real. And you're doing that. And you're solving real big problems. And that's what we love. And so with changing technologies, we're trying to make sure that you can adapt and make sure that you can change and so that you can make all your ideas come to life. Now, I thought I'd talk about another trend that we're seeing, and Scott touched on it, but we're actually seeing this become a reality. We've talked about IT and OT convergence for a really long time. And as we all know, facilities and IT have had a pretty rough and rocky relationship and a disconnected relationship. And this has caused some problems, right? Well, we're starting to see that change because we're starting to see the makeup of staff changing, where we see sometimes in IT departments, people with traditional OT knowledge joining those IT departments of some of our customers. We see in OT departments and facilities department, people hiring people with traditional IT skills who understand IT standards, best practices, computer networking, and cybersecurity. But how we're really seeing this at Tridium is we're starting to see requirements come to us that are traditional IT-based requirements. And I'll give you one example. In the last couple of years, there's been a demand for a new protocol for Tridium to integrate into the framework, and it's 802.1x. If you're not familiar with what 802.1x is, it's an typical IT corporate network protocol where you plug your laptop in. Instead of your laptop getting an IP address automatically, your laptop actually has to authenticate to the network in order to get an IP address. And so we've seen this in corporate networks for years, but now some companies are mandating that all networks have to support 802.1x. And so as a result, we're building that into Niagara. So in July, when we release our next version of Niagara, 802.1x network authentication is going to be in there. And so this is one example of how we see things changing a bit. And I think changing for the better. I think this is going to help our industry. We're also seeing what you're seeing, which is there are more edge devices that are IP enabled, right? So edge devices that traditionally haven't been able to connect directly to IP networks and instead through building systems can now connect directly. And some of them have their own cloud infrastructure and their own apps for monitoring them. So this brings a lot of opportunity, but it also brings some challenges. Challenges related to integration, because a lot of these edge devices still speak the same protocols that they always have, but now they're IP enabled, right? Sometimes it brings challenges related to integration and building a cohesive solution. And sometimes it brings challenges related to cybersecurity. The cybersecurity threat landscape is more pervasive and more challenging than it ever has been before. We've all seen it. So in the past 5 years alone, we've seen a slew of cyber attacks, ransomware, malware. Protocols that we use that we thought were secure have become vulnerable. We've even seen it in our phones and in our hardware chips. This is something that is not going away, and our industry is not immune to it. And I thought I'd highlight an example. We're in a hotel casino, a casino hotel, right? Well, a couple years ago, there was another casino that was doing some remodeling, and they wanted to build an exotic aquarium. And they wanted to put this exotic aquarium right in front and center. And they wanted it big, and they wanted to fill it with just beautiful fish. And they said, you know, if we're going to go big, we're going to go smart. So we're going to get a smart aquarium. We're going to hook it up to our corporate network. And it was beautiful. And they did. They hooked it up to the network, and the manager could look at everything with his phone. How's the aquarium doing? How's the temperature? Do I need to add anything? We're great. Until one day somebody noticed, man, there's a lot of network traffic. Where's all this network traffic coming from? It turns out it was coming from the smart aquarium. There was malware in the aquarium. It was attacking every device, every computer system, every computer on the casino's network. In fact, it broke into the VIP gamblers database that the casino had and stole a lot of sensitive information about the VIP gamblers, streamed it out over the internet, and caused a lot of damage. Friends, anything you connect to your network or your customer's network could potentially be a Trojan horse in your organization. When you buy a device, or before you get a device, and before you connect it to your network, you have to ask yourself a couple questions. One, is that manufacturer cyber aware? Because guess what? Some are not. Did that manufacturer actually put cyber controls in this device? Or good cyber controls? Because guess what? Some companies can't justify the cost of putting cybersecurity controls in their devices. So they don't. Or, another really important question to ask is, will they actually support this product? If there's a vulnerability in this product, will they release patches in a timely manner? Because guess what? Some don't. Now, of course, you know that cybersecurity is more than just what's on your network, right? A good cybersecurity solution revolves around people, process, and technology. And we're trying to get that message out. And so we're writing a lot of white papers. We're, in addition to adding controls to Niagara, we're also just trying to share best practices. And hopefully you've seen some of those articles and white papers around. But this is a big deal, and our industry really needs to take it seriously. And so now that I've scared you a bit talking about cybersecurity, I'll talk about what we're doing to adapt to some of the new trends in technology, right? I've said it before, but I think it bears repeating. The focus of Niagara is openness, extensibility, and flexibility to allow you to adapt to new technologies, to use and connect to new devices, and to use new protocols and to integrate more things almost everything we do is to help you do that. And so every release, we are focused on that as a team to make sure that we can enable you prepare for change. And what I really love is a couple years ago, I met up with a team at Google. And one of the representatives at Google said, what we like about Niagara is we believe it's future-proof. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, if there's a device that Niagara doesn't already talk to, we could write a Niagara driver for that device, and then we could control it and take data from it and connect it. And I said, yeah, that's what an open framework is all about. And we're committed to continuing that on. But now I'm going to talk about some other things that we're doing that we're really excited about, and I can only highlight a few of them, but there's so many more. One, bringing Niagara to the edge. It's been a huge focus of our company over the last couple of years. And as you realize, we released Edge 10 last year, a general purpose I/O controller. And this has been really exciting for us, and we're doing some even more exciting things. In the next release of Niagara in July, we're going to have ACE, the Deterministic Runtime Engine. This means faster startup, and it means deterministic timing when servicing the I/O, and this is really important. But the big picture of what we're doing with Edge 10 is that we have now demonstrated that we can take the full Niagara stack to the very edge. So using the Niagara Portability Software Development Kit, anybody can create a new device, an edge device, put Niagara on it. And the great thing about that is they can benefit from the years of all the work we did related to building the framework, adding new protocols, the integration, the flexibility, and yes, the cybersecurity controls. And we're excited about that, and it also means that you can now manage all those devices with the tools that you're familiar with. But as we planned for Edge 10, we realized there was more that we could do. We wanted to make commissioning easier. We wanted to make management of a lot of Niagara devices easier than it is today. So we started focusing on enterprise management tools and commissioning tools. If you went to the Niagara Summit last year, you saw me demonstrate bulk deployment, deployment of the configuration of devices at runtime. We released that, and we continued to focus on that message. And so one of the things that we've done is we've added more steps for provisioning so that you can commission and send settings and update more devices, all your devices at once. So we've really created a superset of new things that you could do. For example, sending all the security configuration and updating all your devices with security configuration. New certificates, on and on and on. Commissioning devices, multiple devices, out of the box. And so we're really excited about that. The other thing we're excited about, I talked about cybersecurity a little bit. When you're managing lots of devices, or even one device, it's really important for you to have a sense of, how's the security of this device doing? How did I do in configuring this device, right? So we created a security dashboard. So for a station, you can look at the dashboard and you could say, for everything I've configured, is there anything that I could do better? And so it'll highlight some weak configurations that you can then change right on fly. And if you have a supervisor, you can then get a view into all your devices to figure out the cybersecurity posture of all of them at once. So we're really excited about that. Another thing we're excited about, and we're working on it now, and it'll be released right at the beginning of next year, is Niagara Historian. Data is a disruptor, as Scott mentioned, and data is very important. And we realized that the current architecture of the way that we're doing histories wouldn't scale past a certain amount. And so what we've done is we've done a redesign so that we've decoupled histories from the supervisor so that they could be stored in a time series database outside of Niagara. In the cloud, on-prem, in a data cluster, in your environment, we wanted to give you all the flexibility of where you wanted to store it. And we think this is going to help performance. It's going to help scalability, but not only that, it ties together the tags and semantics that many of you are doing right now and couples them with history so you can search histories better. So we're really excited about it. We're still looking for feedback, and we're still looking for partners to tell us how we're doing or what some of your requirements are, so you can always see us and ask about that. Finally, I also wanted to talk more about the cybersecurity journey. This has been a big effort of ours over the past 5 years. Before we released Niagara 4, we realized that we needed to make some changes to cybersecurity. So what we did is we took a cybersecurity standard for industrial control systems called ISA 62443-3-3, and we looked at the highest level of requirements for industrial control systems, and we said, we really think that our product should meet this standard. What are our gaps? And there were some gaps. And slowly but surely, we added all of those security controls into our product. Some that you see because you can configure them as an option, some as you don't see. So things like malware protection, tamper resistance, validation of signatures of the code at runtime. Lots of new controls related to authentication and authentication schemes, multi-factor authentication. The next release of Niagara is going to have digital certificate authentication, as it is a part of kiosk mode, which is a more secure guest account. This continues to be a journey for us because we owe it to you as manufacturers. We take this responsibility seriously. It doesn't end with us, though. This is a partnership that we're all on together. So if you're an integrator and you're integrating products together for customers, part of your responsibility is configuring those systems with security best practices, right? And configuring things as best you can based on the security best practices. And it doesn't end with you either, because the owners, the facility managers have a responsibility too, to monitor those systems, to make sure that they're patched. This is a journey that we will continue to be on. We will continue to focus on cybersecurity, and we'll continue to work with all of you in helping to share best practices, to release more webinars, to share more white papers, and to do more things like we've done with Security Dashboard to kind of give you a sense of how your security is. Now, there is so much more that I could tell you about some of the features that we're releasing into Niagara and some of the innovation that we're doing. Come by our booth, find out a little bit more, but we are continuing to focusing on the future, to invest in new technologies. And we look forward to this partnership with you, and we want you to continue to do what you do best, which is turning ideas into reality. Thank you very much.
Nice job. That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So, Kevin Smith, that was awesome. Thank you again. Kevin ended with cybersecurity. And I'm glad he did, because to us, we believe that we are the stewards of good practice. And as such, as he mentioned, like I mentioned the data, when you do your projects, it's important to consider that data. Well, it's also important to consider your cybersecurity setup. And those who do not consider cybersecurity prior to installing and those systems that get hacked into, those contractors are the ones found liable for poor design implementation. So it's a direct liability to you folks. So we're, again, trying to make sure that you guys know that we have products, services, a lot of ways to help you guys mitigate those risks within the budgets that you're used to working within. So please come to us. Mike and team are working really hard on this at all times. So Kevin, thank you. That was awesome. And again, I just want to thank Tritium in general. As Kevin talked about those features, I can remember yelling at them about not having those. And look they got them. So thank you guys for responding to us, especially the historian. I know that's a huge deal to us. Again, we're data people, and we're super excited about these developments. So all of our speakers, fantastic job. And now we're going to wrap up with our last speaker. So far, we've really focused on what I believe are what we're going through today. And we're looking at it kind of selfishly through our eyes. But now I'm going to introduce a speaker who really is looking at us from an international perspective, someone who gets feedback from companies from all sorts of industries about us. And every year, he brings it all together in a fantastic conference called Realcomm IBCon, which a large group of us all go and participate in. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Jim Young, founder, CEO of Realcomm IBCon.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I'll do that. Awesome. Well, I think this is my second or third time here. Second? So first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for tolerating me. I have that enviable position of being the last person to speak. Science might suggest that there's no way I can get your attention at this point. You've listened for 3 hours, right? The information is now overflow. You're fighting pictures of chicken wings and beer, right? Or a scotch and whatever. But here's what I'll do. I'll make you a promise that if I can hold your attention for a few more minutes, I will promise you that I will share something with you that you did not know, okay? A new piece of information. And if I don't, if you're one of those few people that actually does know everything I'm about to show you, I will buy you a beer or a drink at our conference, okay? So that's a sneaky way to get to the conference. And the reason I'm pretty confident of this statement is one of the slides I literally just threw in this morning when I got here was from a meeting that I was on, a conference call yesterday, the day before, and we're kind of in this very serious NDA situation where I was getting debriefed at a high level on some stuff that the world doesn't know about yet. So unless you've seen that presentation, and it may actually be out there, so I may end up buying a couple beers, but I think you'll see that the information is timely and relevant and absolutely pertinent to you. So before I start the official presentation, for those of you who don't know me, you need a little context. Who is this guy talking to me, and why should I listen to him? So, my name again is Jim Young, founder and CEO of Realcomm, ultimately to become IBCon. But I'm going to maybe take a minute, 2 at the most, and describe my journey, because I think it's really relevant to sitting here today, given on all the speakers we've heard so far. So, I did not come from the buildings industry in the beginning of my career. Where do you think I came from? What's the other industry we've been talking about? IT, exactly. I sold those big clunky things called mini computers, hence the gray hair, and you can now start to guess my age. But what's interesting about selling mini computers is at the time, I got to sell very sophisticated communication networks, connecting one mini computer to another all over the country, not the world. And all of a sudden, we had to start talking about connecting IBMs to Wangs, to DEX, to Prime, to all data generals, all these different. And that was really the first time we started talking about wide system or wide area networking, okay? Where we had to connect all these computers. But the other thing that was interesting about my career was that I went through the paradigm shift, and I'm going to repeat this a number of times today, when we went from mini computers to distributed PC networks. I was literally selling an account, the last iteration of the mini computer, and right down the street I was selling somebody the first distributed PC network. It was smoking, burning, ooze was coming out of the circuit boards. It was the most terrible thing, but we knew we were leaving that world and we were going to a new world, as painful as it was. And I literally was stretched, okay? So I got out of the tech industry. I always wanted to be in real estate, so I said, all right, how can I apply what I've learned to this industry? And I said, well, I'm going to go into I looked at how people manage buildings and operate buildings. I said, you guys are using sledgehammers. I mean, what's going on here? So I started a little consulting company called the Jameson Group, grabbed a couple clients called CBRE, JLL, Colliers, Irvine Company, and I said, hey, I'm from the big IT world, Fortune 250. You guys are running your real estate portfolios like, like it's not a very sophisticated industry. You're a big asset class. So that consulting company ended up leading to the foundation of RealComm in 1999. So we celebrated our 20th anniversary. And the principle was real simple. Bring very sophisticated technology to a world that digs holes, puts up buildings, and teach them to run their buildings a little bit better. And what do I mean by run better? It was been mentioned, a lot of the speakers. At first it was energy, then it was operations. Now it's occupant experience. And we've watched that happen over the last probably 10, 15 years. So the conference starts in 99, and then the next year it's like quadruple the attendance. And I go, boy, am I smart. Boy, did I call this, or how do we get this room full of people? Well, it turned out, if the year was 2000, 2001, what was going on? Well, Y2K, something else. Come on, think 2000, no? .com, who said that? Okay, .com, but what happened after .com? .bomb, right? So we saw this hype phase where everything went up, 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 down, down, down. Okay, so now not only do I know paradigm shifts from mini computers to distributed PCs, I can see irrational exuberance. Okay, and it's going to be relative to everything I'm going to tell you. So 2002, I don't know where it came from, probably a little of my IT background. I say, I'm going to write an article, and I'm going to call it Connecting Buildings and Processes to the Internet. It was 2002, 17 years ago. And I actually heard many of the speakers today actually talking about some of the things that I had seen back in 2002. Because remember, I came from the IT world. When I looked up at the ceiling, I saw IP addresses. When I looked at the thermostat, I saw an IP address. Okay, and it's that kind of early thinking that led to the RealComm and the IBCon story. So 2002, then we go to 2004, and we were told we can't see innovation in the United States. So as Scott mentioned, we traveled the world. Started with Asia, Tokyo, Seoul, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore. We looked at stuff. 2004, I saw a Japanese man take an RJ45 and plug it into a table lamp. Multiple things happened here. Power over Ethernet, data flowing back and forth, drivers being drowned, and all of a sudden the lamp shows up on the network like a printer. And we just sat there and we go, bingo, here it is. That was 2004, so do the math, how many years? 2004 to 2009, we just kept plugging along. Companies like Microsoft said, I'm coming in. GSA said, I'm coming in. And then here we go again, another boom. This time it wasn't because of .com or technology, it was because of bad finances. And we all went through 2008, hanging on by the skin of our teeth. Get through the crash, 2009, and this is where the story starts to get real interesting. One of my slides is going to talk about the money that has been invested since 2009 in prop tech, CRE tech, real tech. I'm sure all of you have seen these startups. $9.6 billion from one report last year alone. Now, I don't believe that number. I think the report is over-exaggerating it, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. But anything with a B gets my attention. So you guys and ladies will get people knocking on your door that says, I've got this new great idea. Scott said that this morning. I mean, the phones don't stop, right? So 2009 comes, we go all the way up. Let's fast forward to last year at RealComm and IBCon. So from this small little community, and Ken had mentioned community, we've got probably 15 communities, integrators, end users, all these different people who are trying to get this topic of smart buildings figured out. But the magic is they're all in the same room, by intention. We knew that we had to have the whole supply chain there, 50 billion square feet of end users, and the integrator community, the manufacturer community. So last year, we had 2,000 people from around the world, 30 countries. This year, probably going to have a few more. We are going to have 150 sessions on everything from robotics and smart buildings to edge devices to operating platforms. I mean, you want to go wide and deep, you are going to see topics talked about there that you may not have had exposure to yet, right? But the key is 50 billion square feet of end users. Hudson Yards, New York, Google campus, Facebook, ExxonMobil, Stanford, you name it. Some of the most predominant owners and operators of real estate are going to be in that room begging to talk to people like you who know how to go in the back and make it all work. And by the way, there's a whole other group of IT guys who are trying to figure it out, and you're trying to figure it out, and the only way we're going to get it done is if we do it together, because it is a tremendous amount of OT expertise, IT expertise that has to come together. All right, so with that, I'm going to start, and I'll get through this pretty quick. Where's my timer? Okay. All right, so first thing, what you're seeing here is we assess from December on through our conference, which is about 6 weeks, we send out hundreds of surveys, talk to thousands of people, and we say, what's going on in 2019? Tell us what's going on smart buildings or real estate information management, AI, and from this funnel of information, we come up with the program. What you're seeing here is, I'm going to be doing this at our general session, but this is a little modification focused a little bit more in line with the smart building conversation, okay? So trend number one, single system, single vendor, single building, gone. So if you started your career saying we need some HVAC equipment, let's go to this vendor, and I need some lighting system, you heard that today, I go to this, those days are over. And if you are still focusing on that, you are still selling mini computers. We're still going to sell some, but the trend is definitely in a different direction, okay? And what this gets replaced with is multiple buildings, multiple systems, multiple vendors on what? So see if you guys are paying attention to it. What a lot of our speakers talked about, I think, Scott, you brought it up the first, what is all that, this new integrated, interoperable, what's it required? What's in the middle of it? An IP network, okay? That's gone. Open, integrated, interoperable, IP-centric, that's where it's been going for the last 15 years. But the energy that I'm feeling for this year in the conference, and I'm going to explain to you some of the people who are going to be there, I have not felt this before. I felt it maybe in 2001. That was a little hypey. This one's different. All right, there we go. Base building networks becoming more mainstream. It is no longer this digital system or even this analog system and this wiring schematic. On all the big projects that I get to hear about, Hudson Yards in New York, the new Time Warner building in Manhattan, Google campus, every one of these conversations now starts there. It's not an afterthought anymore. And then there's a whole argument, converge or not converge. On the enterprise network, separate network, okay? We're going to have some discussions about that at RealComm and IBCon, all right? But very few next generation or even current thinking will not start a smart building strategy project without starting here. And if you're thinking, I don't have this expertise in-house, I can't take a big project and configure a really high profile network that can be understand enterprise integration of various data sources. It understands the cyber implications. It knows whether it should be edge or server or cloud and where's the data. Complex discussion. And so one of the things that if you don't understand this, I know Scott's got a lot of knowledge in this, a lot of his customers that he knows that are at the cutting edge of this. Some of them are in this room. I've been talking to them all morning. They know what I'm talking about. And I'm not going to embarrass them and call their names out, but if you're not in this world, this is homework assignment number one. You've got to get here. All right, number two. The concept of the smart building enterprise. Well, Jim, didn't you just say, that's what you just talked about, enterprise. Yeah, I did. Okay, HVAC, lighting, access, all tied together. That's an enterprise. What's the other enterprise that I haven't talked about yet, though? Somebody? Come on. Think about it. The other enterprise is the information management side of it. Anybody ever hear of Yardi? Raise your hand if you heard of Yardi. Okay, good number. So what's Yardi? The largest property management real estate solutions provider in the world. 5,000 employees, global footprint. What do? Well, somebody signs a lease or somebody wants to, make a property manage or a maintenance request. They've got these enormous information management systems that allow real estate companies to manage all their assets. Well, if I want to see where the tenant roster is, and I want to see if this tenant pays rent, why wouldn't I want to see energy consumption on the same screen? So, what I think you're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years, while you're still probably just trying to figure out enterprise number one, enterprise number two is information management and smart buildings come together, and you know what's driving it? This, okay? They had those dang tenants, those people in the buildings. I want to get through parking, or I want to get through the parking gate. I want to get through the front door. I want to call the elevator. I want to order a latte. I want to schedule a yoga session. I want to turn the lights down. It's too hot. It's too cold. They want to do everything by this, and that is forcing every system on either side of the enterprise to to start being forced to talk to each other. That's some pretty complex crap, okay? And you're saying, how old am I? How many years to retirement? Okay, this is too much. The good news is there's a whole bunch of people just like you sitting in some other room someplace. They're the IT guys. And they're saying, this is exciting. There's a lot of opportunity, but I don't know the first thing about a chiller. I don't know the first thing about an access control system. I don't know which data should be talking to each other. What are the relationships? What are the case studies? A parking gate? An aquarium? Okay, that's you guys. Okay, so if you take your expertise, understand the concept of a smart building enterprise, take it one step further and go a little wider, that's where this thing ends up. All right, this has been talked about a lot. IT, OT, and IoT. Internet technology, operational technology, and Internet of Things. This does, and we've been talking about this for RealComm, IBComm, for probably 5, maybe even 7 years. But here's the deal. This IoT thing is getting real. And the slide I'm about to show you is probably why I'm not going to have to buy many of you a beer. I was on a phone call a couple days ago. They're not just thinking about buildings. They're thinking about cities, okay? Everything from cars, autonomous vehicles, and smart buildings. And they're saying, okay, got a disparate system. What are we going to do with it? Or how do we normalize the data? How do we protect it from cyber? Do we compute at the edge? Do we compute in a controller? Do we compute in a server? Do we compute in the cloud? This is as serious of computing discussion as you can get. All right, and think about the companies who deliver this. Amazon, Microsoft, Google. There's not probably any people in this room from those companies, but they are coming into our world at a pace I've never seen. All right, so this is the slide that I think is going to not have me cause buying a beer. I was on this call yesterday. I was getting a high-level debrief, and I said, guys, do you mind if I take a screen cap of this? I'd like to show it at a conference I'm going to be speaking at today. That's here. And they said, take the screenshot, but let us check, make sure it's okay to share. And I got permission this morning to share. We emailed it to these guys, and they inserted it in the deck, okay? So this is Microsoft's Azure IoT strategy. How many of you are familiar that not that you saw this slide, but how many of you are at least familiar with the idea that Microsoft was starting to pay attention to our world? Raise your hand. Okay, good. Probably about 25, 30%. Did you think it was at this level? Anybody? I mean, you're probably working with them, right? So the deal here, they came to if you know Microsoft's history, it started about 6 years ago with a guy named Daryl Smith. He automated the Microsoft campus, called it 88 acres. He was in there toying with different devices, and he was trying to figure out protocol conversions and data normalization. Guy was brilliant, one of the hardest working people I knew. He ended up going to Google, where he's at now. And then he got replaced by a guy named Zorba, who left Microsoft to go to Facebook. They're all going to be at our conference, okay? They're all going to be there. They're the founding fathers, if you will. But this particular slide will probably have some things on there that maybe it doesn't ring true for you, okay? They are literally breaking these things down at technical levels, whether it be cyber secure. We saw some modules that have to do with the cyber security. We got Azure IoT at the edge. That's where you make the decision. Do you compute local? Do you go back to the cloud? And if you think about it, you know, we've all heard of the cloud, right? Who are the big people battling for the cloud? You got Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. I'm here to tell you, and if there's a Google person in the room or an AWS, we can debate, and you're welcome to challenge what I say, but Microsoft is very good at doing what? Selling technology, what to what? Business to business, not business to consumer. The other two companies are extraordinary, and don't get me wrong, both of them have very, very good, respectable, commercial, cloud-based computing platforms. But at the business-to-business level, I think Microsoft's got it. And that's evidenced by the fact that their stock not too many years ago was 25, and I think it just closed at, what, 175? I mean, I'm so aggravated I didn't buy it because I knew what they were capable of doing. But this screen will be totally described in multiple sessions at our conference. But here's the other interesting thing. From Daryl's 88 acres to today, which is maybe 5 years, they're going to have a pavilion at our conference. 25 partners already. partners? These integrators? Are these people going to be in closets hooking wires up? Are these integrators we've never heard of? And the answer is some yes, but there are also people that are potential partners for you, right? Because you can go have a conversation with saying, I get it, but you know what? You really haven't thought this. Do you need a partner? Yes, sign the document. You now have a strategic relationship with Microsoft. Okay? So this slide is simply a proof statement, if you will, of all the different speakers who were saying IT, OT, IoT. You've heard that all afternoon. It's real. And the first one out of the chute, in my opinion, is going to be Microsoft. However, I want you to think something, store this in the back of your head till my last slide. There's this little company called Alibaba. How many of you are aware of Alibaba? Raise your hand, please. Okay, about half, 60, 70%. Alibaba is the cloud provider, big technology company in China. And they are doing things with phone and cloud integration. This little phone, Amazon's got 4 stores, I think, the smart stores. Alibaba's got 100. And they are radically shifting the relationship between retail and the back-end supply chain to the point where these 100 stores, you simply go up with your phone, you do this, 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 and 2 hours later it shows up at your house, or 2 days, whatever, okay? And I talked to all the major retailers, all the big mall owners. They, over the last 6 months, were not aware of what Alibaba was doing as it relates to the real estate tech industry, and now they do, okay? All right, next slide. Major companies entering the market. I talked about this a little bit earlier, 9-point-something billion maybe last year. Since 2009, 25 billion? I mean, this is just cash coming into our industry saying, the real estate industry is really slow, really disorganized. Let's get out there and automate it. And the venture capitalists say, sign me up, and 30, 40, 50, 60, 100. Now that's 500 logos right there. For our general session, we're going to duplicate that 6 times, because to visualize what is now going on in our industry, 3,000 companies. Many of them won't make it. A certain percentage of them are going to be your partners. You're going to maybe buy some of these companies. You're going to use their products. But this, what's happened in the last 3, 5, 7 years, as far as new people coming into our industry, I have not seen it. And we keep waiting for it to pop, for a thing to turn around, but it just keeps going. All right. I think it's funny, we're all using the same image. The same hooded guy that's meant to scare you. It should. It should. I'm one of the founding organizations for something called REC, Real Estate Cyber Consortium. And other than Jerry, who's ever heard of REC? Nobody. Jerry, want to raise your hand just for the fun of it? Jerry's actually a contributing partner of REC. And what REC stands for is Real Estate Cyber Consortium. And we've been at it for about 5 years informally, the last 24 months getting more formal, NDAs being signed, MOAs, NDAs and MOAs being signed, and hopefully by Realcomm we'll have 20 companies that were able to sign that documentation. These are some of the biggest real estate owners on the planet, both corporate, commercial, institutional, government, that are saying, we're connecting all these buildings, boy, we better make them secure. We better make sure they're not hackable, because the minute something goes down, goes bad, the brand is destroyed, people could be hurt, and we just know what's at stake. So I'm not going to belabor it too much, but almost every single speaker talked about cyber. We're going to have a cyber forum at the conference, first day pre-con in the morning, 4 or 5 hours. Last year we had 225 people standing room only. We're going to have more than that this year. And you're going to see some of the most precise thinking on the topic of cyber. And I think we just confirmed yesterday, we will have somebody who's going to maybe give us some insight into this Huawei technical backdoor issue. We got some people, ex-FBI guys coming. We got a guy coming out of Washington, D.C., who's run the China technology think tank for 30 years, 5 administrations. We're going to get to the bottom of this. So if you believe cyber is important, you're going to want to be at that cyber forum. All right, 5G CBRS. We heard Kevin mention 802.11. Critically important. Wonderful to doing that. But we got hit with a tidal wave about 18 months ago about 5G CBRS in-building wireless. How many of you, on a scale of 1 to 10, think you have about a number 8 knowledge on 5G and CBRS? Any experts in the room? The minute I think I'm an expert, I talk to somebody different and they totally just rip it apart. Okay. All I will tell you though is there is a tsunami coming, and right now in other parts of the world, at the Mobile Congress in Barcelona about a month ago, Huawei was running around selling their 5G systems, and they are tearing it up. They got 30% market share globally. They are doing things that we're not doing yet, okay? So if you want to, and that's going to be the slide I'm going to finish up on, what is going around the world, we either pull up our bootstraps and get ready to compete, or we're going to see the last 50 years of enjoying being the technology leader on the planet taken away from us. And it is that simple. So if anybody is not familiar with this, we're going to have a 5G pavilion, 25 companies who want to bring wireless inside the buildings. And we got all sorts of sessions. We got a 5G Congress on our pre-cons that we're partnering with a company that's going to have every service provider there, every manufacturer. If you want to be doing smart buildings 3 to 5 years from now, you've got to start learning about this. It's not ready for prime time, but you've got to start understanding what the implications are. And when you start thinking about long-term strategies, where does this fit in? All right, startups, I already talked about that a little bit. Too much money, too much confusion. We're going to, the advice we have to people is, I think it was mentioned earlier, what is the business case? What is the customer's problems? What problems are you trying to solve? Focus on that. But I have to admit that this has caused a lot of confusion, and we've heard fear of missing out. FOMA, everybody hear that? With all of our advisor discussions, I'm afraid I'm going to miss out. I got to schedule 300 demos. You got to have a strategy to deal with all this money coming in. Otherwise, it will overwhelm you. All right, this was touched upon too. We've been trying to raise money for math and science at Realcomm for 12 years. When I first went to China in 2004 and I saw how hardworking they were, how they were focusing on math and science, I came back here and said, the barn is burning. We're now 40th in math and 32nd in science. And nobody really knows those numbers, and they may have changed, okay, in the last year since I've looked at them. But all I know is we are not educating our kids coming out of high school to deal with the math and science that's going to be required for the 21st century. And you're all going to start to feel it. So as you start reaching for IT guys and putting these enterprises together, it's a real problem, which I do not have an answer for right now. Okay, we're trying to team with universities. We're trying to team with community colleges to figure out a way how to get, the people that you want to hire. Maybe they don't go for their MBA from Stanford or from Wharton. They learn this as a skill. So if anybody in this room's got any suggestions, I really want to encourage you to talk to me, because this, I think, could be one of the biggest problems our industry faces, is that as these buildings get smarter and smarter and more connected and global and portfolios and enterprises, we just don't have the skills, OT and IT, to deliver on what's going to be taking place. All right, last slide and then a quick video. Is it okay to go over a few minutes, Scott? Okay. So we've heard this a lot today, right? With increasing connectivity, privacy is becoming an issue. So my job at Realcomm and IBCon is to usher in, as Scott said, what's been happening the last 3 years, what's going on this year. We survey everybody. But part of my job is to understand what is next. Okay, and if you ever want to know what Jim's thinking next, just look at the sessions at Realcomm and IBCon that nobody attends. Okay, because data standards years ago, nobody was there. We've been having privacy discussions as it relates to connected buildings at Realcomm and IBCon for 3, maybe 4 years now. Actually, the first year wasn't too bad. Last year it dropped for some. I would have thought that people's interest. But we are going to be confronted as an industry, as building owners. We are going to be confronted with this privacy issue faster than I imagined. And faster than any of you can imagine. Okay, so for all the cool things it did and the demos we saw, I get it. We have a building owner in New York who 3 years ago, big building owners tried to get facial recognition for easy entrance, facial recognition, gate recognition, seamless, I think is what we called it, just walk through, frictionless, and they struggled. Okay, and I think this is probably a good time to show you the video, and then I'll wrap it up.
现在好几次锁起门呢。对，就是这的。
Well, let's see how long it takes you to find me. Thank you very much. Let's go.
我们可以追溯到说出现每一张脸都可以对应说他的身份证，以及他所经过，比方说在过去1周我们回溯他的行经路程，我们也做了像人和车的匹配。那同时在人上匹配还包括亲属关系匹配，然后是你经常接触人员之间匹配。就是当摄像机布到或者我们传感器布到一定密度的时候，其实我们会经常知道你跟谁经常在一起。
Well, here we are then. I've just got out of the car, close to the city centre, and for the purposes of this exercise, the plan is for me to start walking in the direction of the bus station. My image has already been flagged to the authorities as a suspect, and in theory, it should only be a matter of time. So already on this bridge, I can see 1, 2, 3 CCTV cameras. Of course, there's no point hiding from them. Just keep on walking.
可以呢，不一定非要从门里头通过，他就站在。哎，对，就是这里，就是这里。对，就是这里。
Uh-oh. Right behind me, you can see just over my left shoulder there. Hello, guys. I've been expecting you. Maybe these guys aren't in on the joke.
All right, so that's next, but it's really not next, it's actually now, right? And so I'll finish up with this slide. If you don't follow the international technology scene, which I know you're all busy, you may not know, these are 6 companies that are taking the world by storm, okay? And you think Huawei, wireless infrastructure, the back end of all the 4G, 5G telecommunications needs, Alibaba Group, Amazon, think Amazon, e-commerce, ZTE, another telecommunications giant, Tencent, if you've ever been to China, their app, their Facebook, chat, all their social networking is done by WeChat. You really can't exist in China without WeChat because that's how you talk to your friends and chat with them and text them. It's a whole social communications infrastructure. Baidu is their Google. And then Hikvision is those ones building those cameras, right? With the artificial, they figured out that they couldn't, I think somebody mentioned earlier, go back to the cloud because of the requirements for all the bandwidth. They're doing it right at the camera level. But forget about that. What we couldn't do in one building in New York, they've done for a whole city and soon a whole country, okay? So the other side of this is something called social credit scoring. Anybody ever hear of social credit scoring? Show of hands. That means all the data feeds come from all these systems into a centralized system that basically rates your behavior on a real-time basis. You talk about data integration on a scale the world's never seen. We're trying to get buildings to talk. They're doing this for 1.3, 1.4 billion people. Okay, and so in the next 2-3 years, all of you are going to be involved in meetings where this whole privacy issue is coming front and center. You're not going to be able to avoid it. And you're going to have to figure out where you fit. Great application, very cool benefits, makes a lot of sense. But what I would ask you to do is think it all the way through, unintended consequences, what happens when we get there. And I'm not saying that the world's going to split in half. One a West model, one an East model, because actually China's selling this technology to Venezuela and to Africa, so it's all over the place. So the other thing I want you to take away from that video and that slide is we got some catching up to do. And I've been saying that since '04. Early audiences used to throw tomatoes at me and say, Jim, get off the China thing. And I did, I backed off, but I can't back off anymore. What I've seen in the last 36 months is they are coming like a freight train. And we gotta get up early and work late to get back on track. So, Scott, awesome. Is that good?
Thank you. It's great. All right, so we got a few minutes left before we open up the ballroom for everybody. So if all of my keynote speakers would come back, and I'd like you to populate these seats up front. Also, I should have 2 mic runners whom are going to help us capture audience questions. And if they could also come forward. All right. Mike's got him, right there.
Everybody's mic.
I'm going to let Jim lead our Q&A here. We're going to start by having Jim kind of ask some questions of the group, and then when we complete that, we'll open it up to the audience. So I have one question for Jim though before we get started. So, you know, when you showed that last group of companies and your study of what you've seen in other countries, just can you tell us where we're at as an industry versus other countries? And I'm talking the United States specifically. We have multiple markets here, but United States and Canada. I mean, where does it sit versus
so that's
the rest of the world?
That's a complex question, okay, and I'll try to do my best to answer it. So
I'm going to go sit down.
At the building level, smart building level, I think we were behind, but now I think we're actually catching up, if not even way ahead. Okay, so if you look at scale, if you go to China, you'll see incredible one project, right? But then 95% of the buildings in China are old, and nobody's paying attention to them. They're dumb as doorknobs, right? So in our particular smart building world, I think we have it. Okay, so put the pedal to the metal, we'll keep it. But at a global technological city level, I mean, they're doing things I have not seen, specifically China. Huawei has got a division called Smart Cities, okay, where they sell the 5G infrastructure, the telecommunications backbone, and all these other systems. They've got 160 cities in 90 countries or something. We're not there, okay? And one of the reasons, and this is something we're gonna have to wrestle with a lot, because we're a democracy and we like to argue, okay? I could ask one question in this room and I'd have half of you punching the other half, okay? That's just who we are, okay? Not so much there. Okay, you got a centralized government that says this is what, and they have something called 2025, which is by 2025 they want to own major emerging industries, not copy and paste anymore. They want to own it. So you got this vision, centralized, no competition. They're all working together. You know, if you take debate out of this, they can move probably faster than we can, right? So at the smart building level, I think we're ahead. But at the bigger thing, and I think you're going to see a lot of headlines in the next 24 months. Interesting, MIT just broke off their relationship with Huawei about 2-3 weeks ago. They said no more partnerships, no more buying their equipment. And there's still, you know, is it safe to do? You know, these questions are still, but we're going to spend a lot of time on the conference because we got multinationals at our conference that they got offices all over the world.
Right.
And knew that what they do something here and then it's different there. And so I literally got people I know are getting on airplanes flying over there and they're going to spend a month trying to figure this stuff out. So I would say understanding China tech is going to be in your future, and if you want to avoid it, think about your kids. They're definitely going to be involved in figuring this stuff out. So hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you, Jim. Yep.
All right, so you've heard a lot of information, right? And you're, you know, it's coming out your ears, and some things some of us agree with each other, some maybe disagreed a little bit. So what I want to do is, each of these guys' presentations was off the charts, but a little different, okay? So I'm actually going to ask a question. I usually wait till the end, but I think it would be a good way to get us started. We'll start with Ken, and then we'll just work our way down. In 30 to 60 seconds, what's the one piece of advice out of all the stuff we saw up there? What's the thing that resonates the most? And if they're only going to take one piece of your advice, as far as what did they do Monday morning after hearing all this and going to the exhibit floor, what did they do Monday morning?
Well, I would say increase your people, because that's your only asset, and basically pay attention to how your people interact with their communities of practice, and basically reformat your company to support your core communities of practice, and basically set out a plan to how am I going to move into communities of practice I can't even see from where I stand now. And I think you've done a great job of presenting a bunch of those.
Okay.
Yeah, my recommendation would be to look at whatever strategic plan or planning you have and try to match and find what part of the journey you want to be in. I don't think it's for everybody. I think some people will go and move forward. So really being highly selective about your intent, because out of a day like this, when my head is buzzing, pet relief was the most important moment for me. I'm kidding, Kevin. So that's what I would. And so I think, bring it back to something simple. Just pick maximum 1 or 2 things that you want to do. You could have it's a complex world, and I would only try to put it down to 1 or 2 practical things.
So this is something, and for a lot of you know me well, so I'm not going to surprise any of you, but who was the most important person on stage today? Anybody know?
Well, that was you.
Was it me? No. Who could I have not done this whole thing without, right? Who? Mike Mitchell. What is Mike Mitchell? He's an IT guy. How many of you have a really good IT person next to you in your business today that you can go to and talk to every day like I can Mike Mitchell? How many of you have that person with you? So my recommendation is if you don't have that person in your camp, in your crew, I recommend you get that person. Because there's no way you can approach these technologies without that competence.
I would say read, be curious, and think about, what works for you in terms of, structured ways to get through all the different available information, but in a way that works for you, that you're doing your job. But there's so many tools available right now. And so how can you keep yourself abreast? And even it doesn't have to be to master something, but it's going to drive your curiosity. And now more than ever, all this information is available, all these tools are available, all these trends, they may or may not hit you, but there's so many opportunities for things to take advantage of to improve your business. And there's little nuggets, and it doesn't have to be big ideas, but they can be little things that are going to build upon each other. So, if you're not curious, things are going to kind of go past you.
And I would say dream big. I mentioned that you all turn ideas into reality. And I see that happening, and I see it true. And I want you to continue to do that. And if you don't know how to do it, try something new. Because all of us are adding new capabilities to our products. And we're finding that a lot of the people who use our products are not using all of those capabilities, like tagging and hierarchies and things that Scott already mentioned. You could really save yourself a lot of time and do some great things if you just continue to try new things, think of great ideas.
So just to wrap that conversation on the IT side, okay? Just a show of hands. I'm going to go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%, okay, of IT people in your organization, okay? And don't be embarrassed if you're at the low end, and don't be too braggy if you're at the high end. But how many of you have at least 10% of your employees that focus on IT? No hands. Well, a couple. Okay. 20%. 30? 40? 50? All right, got 2 hands left. Anybody? That's all I can see. Anybody else? All right. That's a problem. Agreed? Everybody agree? What should the number be?
Well, there's strong indicators that the technician of the future, we oftentimes talk about matching a tradesman with an IT person and creating the perfect combo. But now we got kids coming out of school, they got electrical, mechanical, engineering degrees, and they are IT savvy. And these are not 2 people anymore, it's 1.
Right.
So we even got to think ahead of hiring IT people to when we actually have what I call a cyborg, half man, half machine, or half mechanical, electrical engineering, half IT. And it's a person that you can send out to a job site, and they'll make a huge impact on the technology deployment at that job site, having those two skill sets together. So
Anybody
that's
else
where I see
want
it
to comment?
going.
So Jim, for me, it's not a question of agreeing or not. Yeah, in an ideal world, fantastic. But those people are not accessible to us. Right. They're too expensive, too rare, and probably not available in the markets that we operate to. So, yeah, I love the idea, but I think it's not practical from a budget perspective, from a being able to attract and retain that talent in the place and so on. So we have to find another strategy than bringing it in-house, in my view.
Hold that thought for 1 second, because I think that's a conversation I think we should have, is this tech shortage conversation. Yeah. But let me, I like efficiency. I always like getting to the finish line fast. Here's something we've actually been suggesting in sessions at our conference and in small rooms probably for the last 5 years, because this has been a big topic. So if you're not at 20, 30%, how many of you know what a systems integrator is in the computing world? So, you know, if you got a company, you're an accounting company, and you need 50 workstations and some servers and cloud access, you've heard of that, right? They're systems integrators, but they don't deal with buildings. They deal with business enterprise. Pretty much everybody familiar with that? Okay. How many of you think that there's at least one good-sized regional company or even small company in the town or the territory that you work? Pretty safe to say there's one, at least, 2 or 3? Do you think maybe a homework assignment for Monday morning might be, I'm going to find out who those people are, I'm going to go have lunch with their CEO, and I'm going to talk about this brave new opportunity that if we combine their world and our world, all of a sudden you may have an IT army at your disposal, and maybe there's some partnership opportunities, but if I was in your shoes and I was only a 10% IT staff and I knew, according to this panel, that it's got to be higher, I'd start being strategic. So that's just a little shortcut idea. Ken, starting with you, how do we get, I think we don't have a choice. I think we got to get this talent. Think so, right? Mm-hmm. So give me an idea. How do we start to find IT people that we can afford so we can move this industry forward? Any ideas?
Well, I think it's even a little more complex than that. It's not just finding IT people. It's finding IT people in a community of practice that is useful to us. And plus, we'll probably be looking for several people. And I think we can, when they belong to a community of practice, and you just described a community of practice, systems integrators from an office point of view, that is a community of practice. And we basically, once we bring that and combine it with ours, then we not only pick up those people, we pick up their practice, a whole bunch of standards that they are involved with.
A whole bunch of new acronyms.
Yeah, that's right. and they come. And maybe we only need one of those people that come from that environment, and we probably need somebody from another environment. But I think in our hiring of our new people, their experiences with their community of practice is going to be a much more important thing. Plus, you're probably going to have onwards of 30, 40, 50 communities of practice, various products that these people are used to.
Yeah. I mean, and you're absolutely right about this community thing. They talk different. You know, they say different words. They use different acronyms. Mm-hmm. But we know we need them, right? So it's how do you bring these two communities together? I just thought of something. I mean, this is a really powerful group, and you're kind of in the middle of it. I mean, in the real estate world, we use the word leverage a lot. I mean, maybe each of these guys, these companies give you X thousands of dollars, and you create an IT resource pool, right, that are on the calls. They're available by phone, video conferencing. Maybe that's a role. And
so that's our business.
How many do you have enough?
So we
IT
do. We have
people
a
to
team
supply?
of IT guys, and a lot of these people call them on a regular basis. We have a ticket system that every one of the calls is handled and supported and followed through on. And all the people that they call into, they all come with IT backgrounds.
So will your IT guys go out on meetings and try to close deals with them?
I do most sales support, and as does the sales team in terms of that type of behavior. In terms of what they do for customers, they tutor them, they support them, they can go to job sites and help them understand situations better. What we do at Cochrane Supply is we focus on hiring folks that have a strong IT background, not so much a BAS background, because most of our customers need that level of support, more so than the BAS support.
Are your resources able to address the need, or, I mean?
I could give you an idea of the call volume that we're doing now. I would say when we started it, we were probably doing anywhere from 15 to 30 calls a day. I would say after a couple years, we're probably up to 60 or 70 calls a day. And we believe it's our role to continue to staff that group to handle that increase as a core service that Cochrane Supply offers in order to buy products from us.
So I think that was strategic, smart. I mean, I don't know how many years ago you put that in place, but
I think we've done a good job of listening to our customers and molding our services around directly what they need.
right. Yeah, I mean, even something as simple as getting a couple of you guys really comfortable with Skype, right? So somebody goes into a biz dev meeting, an opportunity or a technical, they pull the laptop with them, and
it feels like, and maybe because we get so many calls now, but it feels like every project has an enterprise integration component to it today.
Yep.
Whether it be authentication, whether it be a calendar that they want to hook up to, whether it be a place they want to store the data. There are way too many times that we need to support something on a network infrastructure that has nothing to do with the building or BAS.
Right.
And to do that, again, we try to bring in qualified IT people with experience in that can lend that support, and we see that as a service that we need to offer.
well, in light of that, I would suggest really keep going because you've obviously hit on something.
Well, look at our great, great customers.
But you've really, I mean, it's leverage where there's a shortage. You're providing an opportunity to fill that void. And I would suspect probably 12 months from now, your call volume will double or,
Well, and so obviously the other component to that is training. So we are very focused on training. We've added quite a few IP courses this year with some of our vendors, and we're going to continue to see how those perform, modify them, add new ones. We believe that it's really important now more than ever to take your traditional technicians and at least give them that IP vocabulary. They got to have that vocabulary at a minimum. And then the other thing we're also really focused on is trying to find IP, IT type products that a service like a traditional BAS person can handle. Ones that obviously meet the IT requirements that we need to meet, but also something that maybe not as featured as some of the stuff in the IT world, but something that's more geared towards things that we're already used to working with, right? And that's an important thing too, is to not upset. We can't ask everybody to go to 0 to 100 right away. So we need these intermediate steps. And we also have this huge problem in our industry, which is lack of budget.
Right.
No one is here to pay us for cybersecurity, a good OT network background, a good data lake plan. None of that comes in the project.
But that will change, in my opinion, because in the early days of computing, that stuff was all given away, to get the deal or whatever. But all of a sudden, it shifted, and the hardware, the software, the technology became a smaller part of the deal, and the services became a bigger part.
But today, still, first cost rules.
Absolutely.
And we are driven to both provide that OT proper backbone, but we actually have to provide it at the same budget they gave us before.
Absolutely.
Real challenge.
Well, we hammer on them a lot.
Yep.
That if you want to get serious about this stuff, you got to produce real budgets.
Right.
And just a thought on the good news for all of you is you're engineers. You're curious by nature. The business you've chosen to be in is very technical. Once you get past the first little couple hurdles of the IT, you're going to love it. You're going to pick it up. Now, are you going to be able to configure networks for JP Morgan? Maybe not, okay? You'll have to hire that guy or girl. But once you understand that it is just another engineering process, just a different engineering process, it becomes fun and exciting, and all of a sudden you go into those meetings and you can answer the questions. So, anybody else?
I want to put one in on the job crafting part of that, because I think that fits, is when we're hiring our employees, I think that's something we haven't evaluated so much in the past. We look at their formal training and this and that, but it's the connection to the communities. It's how do they think they should do their job, and when they bring out absolutely new ideas, basically using social media to carry these things out, basically self-teaching themselves. The young people are much better at learning from YouTube, and you can tell them that if they've got to learn network by noon to do a presentation, then they do it. They basically...
Well, to prove that point, I want to do a shout out to Ping. Where are you, Ping? That gentleman right there hired my daughter, okay, and she's selling... Ping, you want to tell them what she's selling or talking to people about?
She just follows up with people who is interested in our product.
Yeah, my daughter was not necessarily the strongest technical person. She happens to be going to school in Vancouver, which I know is your town. and he was gracious enough to give her a chance to get on the phone. And at 21 years old, she's selling back. That's, which she probably knows more than I do at this point. But we have to be creative, and we have to be willing to put people, if you got people in your family or friends, bring them into our industry.
Yeah, one of my favorite talks at IBCon a couple years ago was IT and OT, and you were the moderator. I don't know if you remember this, and you said, "How are IT and facilities going to start working together?" And somebody answered, "One death at a time," which I thought was really funny.
Which one?
and so what I see though is I see that we're going to have to just demand training because you're not always going to have the budgetary resources to hire people. And so I think training and even self-training is going to be part of the solution.
Well, we 2 years in a row, and I think we're going to do it this year again. He's in our group right at the community college, where they're actually trying to figure out ways to get these as engineering curriculums, OT, smart building curriculums in major universities. I mean, IT in an enterprise is one way, but it's a whole new world. So we're doing everything we can. If you got local schools, community colleges, you as business leaders, you go knock on the door and say, "Hey, I know you're teaching, networking for business enterprise. How would you like to teach network for OT enterprise?" I mean, these are huge opportunities, I think.
And Jim, I think, Scott provides a critical role in the industry. Training community is another one. But for us here on the stage, the technology providers, and Jim presented, we got to really be the one that brings three things to the market: low code, low touch, low support technologies. Because today, the reason you need this extraordinary amount of resources, it's still requiring coding. No, that's dead. Low code, no code is that. Too much touch for you guys especially. We got to eliminate this. And high support, it should be equivalent. That's what I call the self-serve model. Right. So Scott has to fill in and so on, but us, the technology providers, we need to catch up and bring solutions that don't require
a manual. Yep.
Yeah. Think about the people, our customers, how our customer base is going to evolve with people who are used to, they don't really care how the phone was put together or what's in it. They care what it does.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so things over time will become just more outcome driven from our customers.
Anybody else? So I just thought that whole skills, I heard it in everybody's presentation. Do we have time for one more round of questions amongst us, Scott, or do you want to go to questions from the audience?
If it's okay, let's hit the audience, for time's sake.
We have mics out there?
We do. Any questions in the audience, just raise your hand.
Now,
we got traveling mics.
I've done a million of these, and y'all sit there. I'm not asking the question. Please ask the question. I mean, this is a time for you to come together as a community, and there's no such thing as a dumb question, because when you ask it, everybody's going to go, "Boy, I'm glad he asked it," okay? So I really encourage you to take this opportunity. You got really smart people sitting up here to come out with some questions.
Yeah, hey Scott, Glenn Remington with Consumers Energy.
Hi, Glenn.
Utilities guy, but building geek at heart. I do have a question, but I wanted to first just thank you for this event in Detroit. It's priceless in our world to be able to come to Detroit with this gathering of people and have a two-day meeting like this. So thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
In my world, well, some friends of mine from ASHRAE, acquaintances, published the Smart Grid 201 standard Smart Grid information models, and ISO standard 3, 4, 5 years now, I think. Those same acquaintances and myself will be releasing a Smart Grid applications guide for building professionals this summer. We live in a world where these buildings you all talked about all day, they're probably paying a demand tariff. They're probably participating in demand response programs. They're probably fiddling around with renewables on site. They may even start sometime soon fiddling around with microgrid, possibly microgrid as a service from a utility. Can you speak to that transforming world on the energy management side and setting these buildings up to actually work with utilities specifically?
Well, you guys are, I can give you 30, 45 seconds on that. We've been talking about microgrids for probably 5, 7 years now. And it's not the traditional, gas, diesel, fuel type grids. These are all next generation renewables. So out of 5-7 years of conversation came a company called CleanSpark out of San Diego. Anybody hear of CleanSpark? Solar panels, storage into next generation type storage, flywheels, crazy stuff, distributed over a low voltage network to a very highly instrumented building. Camp Pendleton was one of their first projects, and they did 7 buildings, including a parking garage on a 30-panel solar array. I mean, so they nailed it. And they just closed on a deal 6 months ago for Macerich, big mall owner in LA. And this will be the first net zero mall in the world. So it's alive and well. It's not moving as fast as any of us think it should. But, you know, why should you create more energy and pump it into a dumb building? So there's got to be a relationship between next generation grid and next generation building. And it's a small group of people, but I think they're making some reasonable progress. You know, so anybody want to add?
Yeah, I would say for this, there is 2 words, code and incentives. If you really want to move the needle, I was in New York Monday. If there is not a code that it gets enforced, so New York just promulgated that new green mandate, but if Con Ed does not put an incentive in place like they just pledged to do, codes, it takes too long to get enforced and so on. So I think there is always good intentions, but the economics have to match. And I know of these 2 words, that's what really bring everybody to the table, and then the technology and the people follow the money. I wish it would be a nice, everybody would buy into green buildings and so on for the sake of our children, but the reality is code and incentives.
The driver for Camp Pendleton was national defense. They needed to know that that building or that base was going to be operational if they ever got hit, attacked by anybody. And I'm not sure anybody's going to make a decision to put a smart grid and a building project together based on that, but that's another factor, that distributed energy sources as opposed to centralized, long term, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think I did want to just, the notion that 5 days a week from 11 to 7, the folks in this room designed building controls that would help that owner pay a smaller reoccurring demand charge. That's like entry level, and then demand response and microgrid and renewables and net zero. I really think that's a huge opportunity on the let's build new tech tools and new training, because these building owners write a check once a month, and they're very large checks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have some customers that are building solutions with Niagara to maximize the use of microgrids and really changing the way their facility is used to maximize energy and stuff like that. So afterwards we can talk, and I can put you in contact with some people.
And we will have a microgrid session at IBCon, so if you're interested, I can give you information on that.
Jim?
Thank you very much.
Oh,
Thank
Jim,
you.
I got
Another question.
One more answer to that. Is I think that's going to fall on you, master systems integrators, real hard and real fast, because we're getting so much wind and solar on the grid, and we've got this peaking problem, and then that's creating these demand events, and you're going to have to do almost anything during those demand events. And the article we had a few months back that showed the electric car plugged into the building, basically helping us over a demand event. And the demand events aren't particularly for long times. They might only be 2 hours or so. But the bottom line is the utility company can no longer provide that because we've put them in a situation they can't build generation. So they have to, and they're getting a large portion of their power from solar and wind. And all of a sudden, they get this one day, there's no wind, there's no sun, and they've got to go back to old school. And they will be buying kilowatts back, and you, as systems integrators, are going to have to figure out how to do that. What can I shed and that? So that's going to be complex. I'm very glad that I just write about what it is you guys do. I'm glad I'm no longer an energy consultant.
Yeah. Okay, another question. Yep, right there.
So you guys have talked a lot about all the extra work we could add on, like tagging, security, where we still operate on a budget, right?
Correct.
So we're also trying to reduce our commissioning time by 30% through optimization. So I'm wondering what your guys' insights are on staff development, terms of like, say, robot versus the artist. So process-driven procedures for staff versus freedom and deliverables. If you guys have any insights in moving forward down that road.
Anybody?
I guess I'll start. And the most successful companies I see in the field in terms of that always have a culture. I believe it starts with the culture of innovation when it comes to our industry. We see a lot of companies will actually have a competitive culture within to see who is, you know, within the group, whom is the tech master of all. I know at Cochrane Supply we use Star Wars as a culture theme. We bring in young people, we call them Padawans. After we beat the crap out of them with training and role playing, if they do a good job and they survive, they get a lightsaber. Now we call them a Jedi. And it may sound silly and, you know, you giggle a little, but it matters. The culture matters. And I think that's probably one of the keys to building a good team today. So.
I'd add a little bit to that. I think we're trying to change the world as Bob the boiler man, and we've now moved out of the boiler room, and we have a much greater presence. And we're actually doing amazing things, but we still think of ourselves as Bob the boiler man, and we keep trying to work in that environment. So I think we need these industry ambassadors that can kind of unravel us and sell us a little bit better, and maybe get you a little more budget to do what you're doing.
Yeah. To answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Just pile on one more little quick thing. It's funny you answered that way. Common purpose, vision, you know, created by the leader. Innovation, true innovation, curious people, and hard work. Yep. That's it.
And I have one more thing. I think part of it is a challenge to us, the manufacturers, and the ones who develop the software. And we're continuing to try to make configuring things easier. And I know we can continue to improve that. One of the things that we did with Niagara 4 is we decided security is so important. It's important to default to the most secure configurations, and that way, if you just add a user, it'll default to all the most secure configurations and stuff like that. And forcing people to make good decisions with technology. And there's a psychology of that we're playing with, and so we're trying to make things easier because we do realize that you know, training, you know, costs money, and you do have to invest your time to learn. And so this is something that we'll continue to focus on to try to make these things easier. But yeah, I agree with everything that's been said here, especially about having a learning culture and an innovative culture, and one where you hire and you encourage people to learn and take the initiative to learn for themselves, and that's always exciting.
Well, and that goes right around with my experience when I came back from China, and nobody can fault China. I mean, they're just going for gold. It's their opportunity. I mean, but what hurts me is when I come back and I see our math science scores dropping, I see engineering, you know, in our universities dropping. I mean, we've got to get back to a culture of math, science, innovation, curiosity, hard work. I mean, we've had a good run, you know, a couple 100 years, but if we want to keep this run going, all your kids, your grandkids, this is what you got to be teaching, inspiring, talk. You can't be talking about Kim Kardashian at the dinner table, okay? For those of you who do, right? You got to be talking about things and projects and ideas. And I know it sounds corny, but it's not. I mean, it really drives the discussion. Another question?
No.
Right there, Tank?
Hi, gentlemen. Whoa, that's loud. Just a quick comment for gentlemen over there. So we're a manufacturer. We do development in sprints, so 3-week sprints. One day, every second sprint, we take a day and we explore a topic that we're interested in. Sometimes it's CRM, you know, MQTT, and it's not always tech related, but we take one day every 6 weeks. It happens 7 times a year, so it's not a lot of time. People love it, and we get away from that day-to-day stuff. And actually, a lot of innovation has come out of it as a byproduct. Anyways, just a quick comment. Question for the panel. Jim, you were talking about a threat from out east. sorry, out east, not New York, but China.
Mm-hmm.
No one mentioned what's happening in the home automation world.
I'm sorry, with what?
In the home automation world,
yeah.
or home tech, or home automation, or technology that comes out of Apple and Google and Amazon, Alexa, Google Home, all these things. What are your comments there? Is this a technology, a world, a market we should keep an eye on? Us as commercial automation, commercial technology, building automation?
Well, I mean, their lead, I mean, the home automation market, at least from my vantage point, is moving much faster, okay? To good. I mean, that's good. These are big companies. But right behind that, you got to quickly have that privacy discussion, because sending me a Nest with a microphone in it that doesn't have, it's not in the marketing specs and it's not in the technical specs, that's a no-no, okay? You don't put a microphone in the middle of my house and not tell me. So I do think that we should learn from them, right? And they're somebody, you know, your speed, you don't get manuals when you implement home automation, right? It's correct. It's quick config, click a couple buttons. So to your point earlier about needing it to be simple, and we as manufacturers, you said it as well.
Absolutely.
It's critical. So I would absolutely take home automation as lead. Anybody want to pile on?
I think they're driving expectations in this industry, which is a good thing, and it forces us to think differently. But also, home automation is a little different in that everything is rip and replace. So, for example, I have an irrigation system, and my house got hit by lightning and it stopped working. And so I ripped it out, went to Home Depot, and I saw, oh, I can get a smart irrigation system, right, for just a few dollars more. And that's how that's happening. People are replacing their thermostats, replacing their devices, adding new devices. And this industry is different in that, you know, equipment's going to last for a really long time, and it's important to be able to integrate with all of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same type of, at a micro level, the same IT-OT convergence is happening. If you look at within the security industry, you know, we see it, a lot of, you know, system integrators or, you know, people going the last mile. I mean, they're getting attacked by Ring and all these DIY spaces, so they're figuring out, okay, how do I expand my value proposition? Instead of just being security, I can provide a smart home solution. And as that gets more competitive, they say, it's like, wait a second, I can take this up into the light commercial market, and I can expand. And then I can get into, you know, I can, you know, do other domains and systems.
I really agree with your statement, though, about they're setting the expectations. It should be easy. It should be simple.
Yep.
And even though we are more complicated, we are more expensive, that's what the expectation. Consumer technology, this thing is changing everybody's expectation on how I control a building. Real quick, Ping, I just want to pivot to the other one. I know your company's got, everybody's pretty relatively young, right? You want to share your strategy on how you're bringing young people, maybe with not a ton of experience, and you're developing them? Because I think you're doing a pretty good job with it.
Universities around have co-op programs, and these students are hungry to learn and to prove themselves and to gain experience. We tap into these programs. They're super cheap. Sometimes it's government funding. And, you know, it takes a little longer, 2, 3, 4 years before they graduate. But when they graduate, they knock at your door and say, look, I'm looking for a job. I love working here, if they did. And, you know, we've been around for a few years. So now we're getting these kids back, and they already know our business. They know our culture. They know what we do. They know what they want to do. And you know, like Ken says, they sometimes come to us and say, look, I did that for you 3 years ago. I'd love to come in and do that. So universities have, it's an incredible pool of experience. And, you know, let's face it, what we do is not rocket science, right? Bring them in if they're eager and smart, and you help them up, they'll learn faster than you can imagine. You know, we brought on a lady who came from the clothing manufacturing, and she can speak BACnet now better than most of you guys, I tell you. Right? And it's crazy.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
It gives you hope, right? That's cool.
Yeah.
Time to wrap up.
All right, we're going to wrap. So how about one quick 15 seconds? Ken, final thoughts.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm excited for all the work that you folks are doing. And as I mentioned, again, I'll reiterate it, I'm glad I'm selling newspapers and not trying to integrate the myriad of systems that you folks are having to.
The industry is on the move. You're on the move. We're going to win this. We have an opportunity of a lifetime to take this industry, make it extremely attractive, extremely exciting for the young people, and we're going to do this together.
The opportunities for all of us are immense. And if we don't take advantage of them, somebody else will. They won't be there forever. I can't count how many industries now have systems integrators in them, right? And that's just one example of many ways that you're going to see a lot of people coming into our space. So we have to continue to push and expand and try hard. So
good points.
I just want to thank Scott. This is great, and I think people vote with their feet, and the fact that there's this type of attendance for this type of content, I think just shows it's great. I mean, it shows everybody's
and
appetite
nobody's
for
left.
This. Yeah. So, awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's give Scott a hand. Comment?
Very simply, dream big, keep innovating, try new things, and then tell me about what you're doing, because the projects that you come up with are fantastic, and I love seeing them. So.
Cool. So what I'm about to say, although it may appear self-serving, it really is not. This is a complex beast, and I want to invite all of you to our conference, IBCon and Realcomm. Scott's got a code for Cochrane with a discount. I'll make this statement: if you're not satisfied, I will give you your money back and buy you dinner. You will come, you will be hit with a fire hose from many, many different communities, but most important, 50 billion square feet of your potential customers, they're setting the bar high. And they want you to be able to do what you do. But you gotta go and meet them halfway and sit in rooms with them and listen. And with 150 sessions and 325 plus speakers, I guarantee you will not be bored. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.